Welcome to our special meeting of Larkspur City Council. We are, actually, let's start with a roll call if we can. Is that possible?
Here.
Here.
Here. How do we turn these guys on? Are they on?
Here.
They're on.
Okay, guess we'll do the pledge of the regular meeting. For now, let's just do our business item, which is interviews for the Larkspur Sales Tax Measures Citizen Oversight Committee. There's one vacancy, and I believe there's two, possibly three interviews. So let's start with our first person here. Welcome. I'm Scott. Nice to meet you. This is our group, and we would like to know some things about you to help us figure out if this is a good fit. Usually I don't like to hog the mic, so let me see, would somebody like to get us started?
Sure. Hi, I'm Catherine. Thank you for being here and thank you for applying. Could you just start out by telling us what interests you about this committee and why you thought to apply?
Yeah, definitely.
Is this on? I'm sorry. Everybody can hear it okay? Okay.
I've been interested in trying to find some sort of committee position to be in. I've contacted Allison for quite some time now, kind of poking her to see if there's anything open. I'm interested in this position because I am a resident of Larkspur. I've lived here for quite some time. I'm very passionate about Larkspur. I love being here, and I see that there are so many opportunities for improvements in Larkspur, and I really think that this is such a wonderful community, and the ability to be able to interact with people on a local government level feels really important to me. I'm a business owner here, and I really planted my roots here, and I just want to get involved. And my background in my jobs, I do all of the financial aspects of that. So I'm new to a lot of this, but I'm eager to learn, and yeah, I really want to get involved.
Great.
Yeah.
Is that your very skin?
Fair skin. So I co-own that as a medical spa in Fort Madera, and then I have a woodworking business. That's my own woodworking business in spring. Cool. Yeah.
Sure. Welcome. Yeah, I was reading over your application, and two things I want to acknowledge. One is you're a Mills College graduate. And I taught there 3 years. So yeah. And then also just that you said you want to get involved in local government. I love hearing that. So we had some prepared questions, and it's number 3 here. What are your views as to how the city is auditing and expending the revenue authorized by measures B and G?
I mean, right now, I feel that there are, I think that, sorry, let me backtrack my statement. I feel like right now they are being, everything feels appropriate the way that it's being done. I can't speak to a more in-depth answer just because I feel like I don't know as in depth of that question. Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
That's way possible.
Yeah. I mean, let me just put it another way. What would raise a red flag for you, for measure G or measure B spending?
In general, I mean, I feel that, so I know that there's a couple of different, a couple of different measures within measure G and measure B. So I can pull out
That's fine.
I think that because right now there's the Rose Lane improvements, correct? The Magnolia Corridor study, and then the Plaza Constitution and the fire truck. Yeah. I feel for me, I think that it makes sense that the most amount right now is budgeted for Rose Lane. That feels like something that needs to be prioritized. There's a lot of issues with the streets in Larkspur right now, and yeah.
Let me ask you a question. And thank you for applying, by the way.
Yeah.
So you're applying for an oversight committee. what do you feel is kind of the role of an oversight committee? I mean, what is it supposed to do and what's it supposed to, what's its function?
So I think the most important thing is being able to be transparent and accountable to the public. So obviously being accessible to the public in that way and working together in the committee to prepare all of the budgets and finances as related to whatever measures are being are within that oversight committee.
Thanks.
Good.
Stephanie, do you have anything you want to add?
Can you speak to what you might bring to this committee?
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, I'm very new, so I'm,
That's right, I was too, about a while ago.
which again is from a younger business owner in Larkspur. I just want to be able to learn and learn within the committee and be able to really contribute in any way that I can to the town of Larkspur.
Great. One of the things with oversight committees, and usually when we do a tax measure, we include an oversight committee so that there's an opportunity for a group of community members to keep track of where the resources are going, et cetera. And they have to work pretty closely with staff. They don't really work with us very much. They work real closely with staff. How do you think, what do you think your role is when you work with city staff? Who are the employees of the city? We're sort of the policymakers.
Yeah, like my role is
As on an advisory committee, you would primarily be working with city staff.
I see my role as that's a good question. As I guess I would see myself in my role as being able to collaborate and offer my perspective again as someone who lives here and has a business here and is very invested in trying to make Larkspur a better place to live.
Great.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. You have any questions?
Anything else you want to tell us?
I really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us we can answer?
Thank you.
You don't have to, but if you do.
I was curious, I saw that the meetings times for this, it's twice a year, is that correct?
Or as needed, I think.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that it's more, we would meet more than twice a year, right?
I don't know, maybe staff can answer. Depends on how,
Usually
as needed.
each year. Some years it's just twice.
Yeah. I'm just really thrilled that you are interested in serving in public, in a public role. And please, if this doesn't work out for you, keep in touch so that you can, there's lots of opportunities from planning commission to library board, to city council, to park and recreation, all different things that we would love to incorporate all sorts of members of our community in. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Right.
And
It's
I
about-
want to reach out to you about a committee that Stephanie and I are both on for the Marin Women's Political Action Committee. Might be an opportunity for you to learn more about the other opportunities there are in Marin County. Yeah. Okay, I'll reach out to you about that.
Thanks so
Great.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Isabella.
Is it change?
All right.
Is that working? Oh.
All right, so now we have a second person. Is this on Zoom? Okay, come on down.
Hi there. Expecting being recorded.
Well, it's a public process. You would have put better
I
lipstick
still
on.
have, yeah, I still have the anxiety of, post-COVID,
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming down. Thank you for your interest. We really appreciate it.
thanks for having me.
We are the city council, and it's our job to kind of talk to people and figure out who is a good fit for the different positions.
Mhm.
Regardless of what we decide thank you for being interested and, we love to get people involved. So, having said that, Catherine, will kick us off again?
And you're on Francis, which is like the epicenter of
Beautiful.
the Joneses, who are always referring people.
The
to us.
Jones, yes, Jones was one of my references. I still get them confused. I've known them each for 5 years.
That's all right. I
One
know.
of them moved, so-
One of them moved. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Well, terrific. Thanks for applying. So I guess I'll start with the same question I asked our other candidate was, what interested you in this role? And
Yeah.
what do you think you can bring to this role from your own experience, background, and
Mhm.
interest in public service?
Yeah. Well, I had spent about 8 years in IT. The last 4 of which were sort of in a financial operations kind of overlay, and more or less it was a sort of an audit capacity and a process automation capacity. And so my interpretation of this, and almost read similar to that job description, it was like making sure that things go according to plan. And I think there's maybe opportunity for some process automation is ambitious, but maybe at least efficiencies and at least kind of defining certain processes. And so it wasn't, admittedly, it wasn't the most fun work, but it's very specific. And I'm in real estate now, so it's a very different world. But it seems like some of the measures, obviously, disaster preparedness and deals directly with infrastructure, and that is kind of a cousin of real estate, I guess. So
Right.
yeah, there's and
Great.
like Isabel, I've been wanting to get more and more involved. So we've been homeowners in Larkspur for about 5.5 years now, and love it.
Well, that's great. There's lots of opportunities, like I told her.
Yeah.
So keep it up.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm retiring in 2 years, so you can take this role.
Dave, questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the cookie cutter here. So first, 2 congratulations. One is working AWS, so I've used them a lot.
Okay.
I'm curious about that offline. And second is you're about to be a dad ×2 in
Times
October.
2.
Yeah,
Oh, how'd you
yeah.
go with that? Was that on here?
It's on here,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just got out of the woods. I have a 2.5-year-old, so
Okay.
I admire people.
You're not out of the woods.
You're totally not.
I like the optimism.
Naivete.
I know little
So
Grace.
good. Anyway, to the business at hand. So the same question I asked Isabel, what are your views as to how the city is auditing and expending the revenue authorized by measure B and G?
I mean, I don't have a ton of insight into exactly, the process, but it does look like, it's pretty clear where the funds are supposed to go. Which, I guess in theory should make auditing or ensuring that money is going there. It should make it at least a little bit easier. I mean, I guess I don't have as much insight into the disaster preparedness side, but in terms of like roadways, I guess just like any resident, as long as the roads are in good shape, and I think that's really the extent of it. My understanding is fairly limited. It's I live across the street from Joan, one of the Jones. So
The other one
What
just
does
walked
David-
in.
oh, there she is.
So same follow-up question, what, since you've got, business experience and, in financials, what would be a red flag for you? Like, that, I mean, again, I understand it's not a role you've played or studied.
Yeah.
Just, from the.
No, of course. I mean, if there's $500,000 that's slotted for improvements to the hall gym, you'd want to really kind of drill into those contracts and make sure that that's actually getting spent on the hall gym. I think from my 100 level understanding of the work that's been done so far, it looks like there's quite a bit of specificity there. So from the process improvement days, it's really just kind of honing in on that and making sure that whatever is being spent for each of those categories or buckets is in line with market standard for those services or, whatever it is.
Thank you. Stephanie?
It's great.
Would you like to add?
Well, I mean, I guess, part of being on an oversight committee, sometimes it's difficult to say no to a project that comes before you. I mean, how comfortable are you, after having done the work, and how comfortable are you saying no?
Yeah, well, I have spent a lot of time in sales, so you gotta say it fast and early. And nicely, because whoever you're saying no to, 5 years later, it might be hopefully a yes. So, but I mean, it's comfortable. I'm a people pleaser, so as comfortable as people pleasers can be, I guess, is the short answer. But I mean, you have to be efficient with your time. So for me, I'm trying to get a new career off the ground. I'm 2 years in or so to real estate. I've got a second daughter coming in 30 days or less. And I coach basketball at Marin Catholic. And I try to keep one of the last remaining, 1947 cottages in Murray Park from toppling over. So, you have to say no to a lot to make time for what's important. So I think just making sure that, you're doing the same for the city.
Well, this oversight group does not meet too frequently.
Right.
It's meets as needed, and then on a I don't think a quarterly or a twice a year basis.
Yeah.
But there is details involved in learning and seeing what the detailed financials are. So,
Mhm.
but it's not an every week meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood.
Great.
All right, do you have any questions for us?
Not really at this time. I know that's interview faux pas, but
No.
yeah, not really. I think there's a lot out there and I've done some homework. So
All
Yeah.
right, well,
Thanks.
fantastic. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank
And
you.
again,
Great.
regardless of how this plays out,
you.
please keep in touch and keep your eyes open for other city
Thank
stuff, okay?
sounds good.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
And you're welcome to stay the rest of the evening,
Because you have nothing to do.
or you can zoom in. You can zoom onto us. We don't have the third.
And the third person is not available. Okay. Fantastic. So at this point, would we close this early meeting? Okay, so as that is the only thing, actually, sort of. This one. Okay, so having concluded that, we will adjourn the 6 o'clock unless. We will adjourn the 6 o'clock meeting and we will reconvene at 6:30. Okay, everybody, welcome to our joint meeting of the Heritage Board and the City Council. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Here.
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 I am here.
And the Heritage Board? Should I call those names?
I think Allison is.
Okay, good.
Board Member Gallant.
Here.
Board Member Goldberg.
Here.
Board Member Lanfeld.
Here.
Board Member Schwartz.
Here.
Board Members will pay.
Here.
Yeah, I just realized you don't have a microphone, so that's tougher. Okay, we are all here, so let us start with the pledge. If you are able to stand, let's do that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are going to hold public comment until after our joint meeting. So if you are here for public comment, please be patient. As far as our joint meeting goes, we have a few business items. Let's start with business item 2.1, Heritage Preservation Board efforts and priorities in 2023 and 2024. Who would like to give us a presentation on that? You got it. Me. Absolutely. Pass it over.
All right. Thank you. Yes. Good evening, council members, board members. We just wanted to start tonight by highlighting some of the work that the board has done over the past couple of years. It will my report will closely follow what's written in front of you. The board has reviewed 3 projects, one at 7 Ardmore, one at 472 Magnolia, which is just down the street, and one at 47 Madrone. These are all historically listed properties on the inventory. They've also approved 5 display plaques to be installed throughout the city, which kind of shine a light on the historic preservation efforts and the history of some of the more important areas of town. Discussion topics that the board has tackled recently have been rehabilitation efforts for City Hall, the objective design and development standards for multifamily properties, or excuse me, multifamily projects, and how those would relate to properties on the historic resource inventory. They have discussed outreach efforts in order to bring more people into the fold, so to speak, and they have particularly targeted the wine stroll, the 4th of July parade, and the Rose Bowl dance, which is coming up this weekend on Saturday. And they've also they made a recommendation to remove the city parking lot from the housing element inventory sites, which was removed. And then in terms of priorities for the future, they have explored interest in the listing of the Baltimore train station steps, which are at the Elm and Acacia intersection, and adding QR codes to prominent historic areas of town as a way of getting easy access for people who might be interested in more information. That concludes my report. I don't know if there's anything else that the board members would want to highlight, but I'll turn it over to them.
Well, I'd like to just add a little something about the dance. We've resurrected the Living in Larkspur song. I don't know if any of you are familiar.
I
with
have
it.
a copy of it.
And a friend has put it onto a cassette that'll work, and we've got it in the audio. So that's going to be at the dance.
Oh, great.
It's a very fun song from
Yeah.
maybe the 60s, 70s.
That's a great report. Thanks, Alex. You know, do you want to jump in?
No, go ahead.
So just to give everybody background, we used to sort of on the city council and our different boards and commissions sort of met every couple of years, do a joint meeting so that we can catch each other up on things and hear directly. And when Scott and I did the interviews for Planning Commission and Heritage, et cetera, recently, within the last 6 months, we heard from a lot of commissioners that they would really like to reignite those and reignite that opportunity for kind of a public sharing of the work that's being done with all of us and the public, which is why between the two of us, we worked with the city manager to have this happen, and really looking forward to doing this with Planning Commission and our other boards and commissions. So thank you for the suggestion, because you're the one who in our interview said we need to reignite this. So that's why we're here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Having said that, I think that's a great slide into business item 2.2, which is about City Hall. So, yeah.
Our Chairman Hillary, who's on the Zoom call, had a few points that I know she wanted to bring up as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. And again, I'm sorry, I'll go to you each time just to see if you have comments, because I don't want to skip you just because you're on Zoom.
That's okay. That's okay. Go, take it away, Rich.
Yeah, I'll read from your notes, Hillary.
Hang on 1 second.
Is that microphone on? Because
Yeah, it seems to be.
you can always take it off and hand hold it.
Concerning City Hall, raising awareness of the importance of this building in this community, working with the city and consultants to develop ideas for funding of the renovation. The board involvement in discussions of renovation and construction and usage of the project continues. Another point is the historic markers, getting the placards produced, installed, and the money paid to the fabricators. Updating our website. It's an important point.
Can I just ask you to elaborate on number 2? How many historic markers, and do we have enough? Have we have sufficient funds for those to your budget?
Well, Alex can answer it too. Oh,
Yes, thank you. The Heritage Board does have funds for the placards. I think it was generated through the past and present book sales. And Julian may be able to one to answer timeline questions. I don't know where they.
Yeah, so we've sent the initial deposit to the fabricator and we're waiting to receive back the final proof to approve it before they can start fabricating.
Are these the placards, the larger ones that Marilyn has been working on with you?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
these are signs like you see, well, the Tiburon.
yeah,
Blackie's pasture,
right.
and it's the same fabricator that did those. That's how we got involved with that.
And what about the little or smaller ones we put on a public, you often put on homes or other structures?
We haven't dealt with that,
Okay.
but would you suggest that's something we look
Isn't that what you,
into?
isn't that, I mean, those.
Well,
is-
we have, you'll see them on some of the buildings
You're right.
downtown mainly, little placards that
Right.
just say that it's on the national, our inventory, I think. But we could continue with that. I don't know if there are many that don't have them.
Yeah, I think most of them are already up
Yeah.
over the years. Yeah. So just sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Another point is creating a permanent space for the display of heritage materials. Many other communities, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, et cetera, have dedicated space for historic items and museum information, and we really don't have that. Yeah. Maintaining historic inventory and continuing to work with historic consultants and city planners to adhere to the CEQA guidelines. General community outreach through city website, materials distributed to the schools, as we did for several years to the third grade classes, videos, and possibly walking tours. All important to us. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Rich.
Richie, on online, anything else that you would like to say before, on this item?
Are you talking to me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I just want,
Oh.
I just
no,
wanted to
I-
see, again, I don't want to ignore you just because you're online, so I want to see if there's anything
No,
you
thank
wanted
you.
to add.
No, I think Rich covered it very well. And I mean, I know that the business item 2.1 was 2023 to 2024. But, you know, as a board, we're sort of trying to lay the foundation for future work. And we know it takes time to build an awareness in the community. And we have several ideas of how to do that. And I think it's going to be really important moving forward, especially with City Hall, that we really create an understanding and appreciation for the historical preservation in this town.
That's great.
I have a quick question. Rich, I know you mentioned a place for the materials to hand out. What kind of materials are we talking about and how much space are you looking for?
Well, we're talking about a place for display of the heritage materials that the city owns, the city has. There's really no adequate display. Some of the things we see here are only a fraction of what there is.
Right, so I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for, is it a room? Is
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
It
It would have to be, and Scott, if you like, and I'm just going to put this out there to the board as well, is that maybe at our next board meeting, we could come up with a sort of a draft of some ideas of what I've seen and what other people have seen in communities as far as display and archiving of historic preservation materials. And we're constantly receiving artifacts from the community. People have them in their attic or they find them. So I think consolidating all of that and coordinating that to make it a really comprehensive display of the history of Larkspur.
Where are those things now? I know a lot of them used to be here. Kristen kept some of them and then others were at Helen's house.
Well, if you go in the men's room,
Oh.
right down the hall, there's
In
something.
the janitor's closet. Okay.
And the janitor's closet, yeah. Yeah.
And in the central hall. we do
Yeah.
this.
But the display case right over there.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Drawers underneath, cupboards underneath, or some matters.
So Hillary, that would be helpful to me as a city council person to see what your ideas are. I know in the new library and community center that is being worked on now and was approved. Part of it was approved last night by Planning Commission. There is an archival room there that is planned to be there, but other opportunities may exist for that structure too. is confined in its space, but I think the idea perhaps as we reimagine this building is also an opportunity, so.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be a really fun project to work on in tandem with the council.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I was just saying with that library space, though, thought of primarily as like the library archive.
yeah, sorry, no. I'm not, I don't want to speak out of turn on it, so I don't know exactly what will be in there.
Okay, we can
We can work on that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, and I am hopeful that we can work together to put those spaces together and help accomplish things on that list. I'm grateful for that. I know one of the things on the list is City Hall, and I didn't mean to rush us, but I'm just excited to hear the report about it. So if it is good with everybody, I would ask us to move to 2.2, preliminary discussions on the condition of City Hall. Can we have a staff report on that, please?
Might have to turn around if everybody can see it, but.
Thank you. I'm Julian Skinner. I'm the city's Public Works Director. And so tonight we do have an update for you on the progress we're making on our City Hall renovation study. As you recall, in late 2022, after a number of issues that we had with the building, including the air conditioning and some of the plumbing and some of the electrical and some of the other conditions that we've been dealing with over the years, along with other known deficiencies in the building, such as the lack of seismic and the no fire sprinklers. We hired Kitchell to do a quick analysis of the building to do a quick condition assessment and look into what some renovation costs would be. There were a lot of questions that were raised with that high level study. And so in May of this year, after a request for proposals process, we came to you with a proposal to engage the firm of Page and Turnbull to do a deeper dive into the building, including a historic structures report. So we could have a better understanding on what the constraints would be of renovating the building. And so the work has been progressing. It's primarily in two parts. The first part is an evaluation, looking at the history of the building and the condition of the building. And so they'll have an update for you on that progress tonight. And then the second part will be taking that data and looking at, as the library moves out in the future, what kind of a renovation project do we want to do here at City Hall? And there are some options that we will look at as far as timeframes. And then there's obviously other options as far as what will the building be when the library moves out. So I think at this point, I will hand it over to the Page and Turnbull team to introduce themselves and run through their PowerPoint.
Thanks, Julian. Would you like us to stand over there, or is that
Whatever's comfortable for you, I guess.
okay?
Want to sit down here? Since
Here? Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Just let me know if you can't hear me or if I'm in anybody's way. Good evening, council
closer.
members.
Yeah,
A little closer.
like you're eating it.
Perfect. Okay. Good evening, council members, Mayor Kendall, and members of the Heritage Preservation Board. My name is Carolyn Kiernot, and I'm a principal at Page and Turnbull. I've spent the last 25 years or so with Page and Turnbull adaptively reusing historic buildings in and around the Bay Area. For those of you who aren't familiar with Page and Turnbull, we've been around for about 50 years. We work on major adaptive reuse projects like the Ferry Building, the Walt Disney Family Museum, and the Exploratorium. So we get involved in cities and towns of all sizes throughout California, and we're really excited to be here tonight. One reason I'm especially excited is because I'm a neighbor. Yeah, Carol actually lives just up the street from me. So I live in Old Town, Corte Madera. And I feel invested in this community and really excited to be considering its future. So thanks in advance for having us here. I'm here with my colleague, Elisa Skaggs, and you will hear more from her in just a couple minutes. But she's also an architect with Page and Turnbull and a Corte Madera alumnus, right? That's right. She really took the reins on the lead on preparing the conditions assessment with a whole slate of consultants that we have on board. And I'm not going to talk about us anymore. I think we have about 10 minutes to kind of walk you through what we've looked at so far. We, as Julian mentioned, we were hired to prepare a historic structure report, and he was clear that there are two parts to it. Part one, which we are in the process of completing, is the conditions assessment, and this will be followed by treatment recommendations as well as a cost estimate. And we are sensitive to the fact that we don't want to just continue to study the building, but we would like to study the building with an end in mind. So with that in mind, Julian and his team gave us essentially three tasks. Ultimately, we'd like to come up with 3 reuse scenarios. One is sort of a near-term scenario where we look at the building and what it could be in 5 to 10 years. Looking at a midterm scenario, which would be about 20 to 30 years, and then a long-term scenario, which would be 50 to 100 years, kind of a full major rehabilitation. So this is the full team that we have. It's quite a few consultants ranging from civil engineering to structural engineering to cost estimating. So we're looking at all of the MEP systems, really all of the systems that make this building work. This is our preliminary schedule. We got under contract in July. We've really been hard at work for about a month and a half or so on the conditions assessment, spending time at the building, looking at it, touching it, looking at the roof and the windows and the systems. We're right here with the September progress update to City Council. And one point I'd like to make is that sometime in October or whenever it's relevant to this group, we would like to make sure that we have a stakeholder workshop so we can start to get ideas and hear from all of you about what your priorities are for this building moving forward. And then we anticipate early in the new year having a cost estimate with the 3 scenarios. Very little background about the building. It was the first municipal building constructed in Larkspur in 1913. And you probably know that it's part of a very small National Register historic district that's comprised of this City Hall, St. Patrick's Church, and the fire station next door. And it's a mission revival style building. We were very excited. This image in the lower left where you see the kids on the stage performing, we were very excited when we found the photos and the original plans that showed this upper floor as a community theater. It was really exciting. And, then the juices really start to flow and you imagine what the community uses have been and what they could be moving forward. The exterior and interior of the building were fully evaluated. One of our jobs from the preservation perspective is to look at what makes the building important, what are the features of the building that give it its significance, that convey its historic character and its significance. So this, I don't think I'll go through all of them, but it's really what you see in the building envelope. There were very few historic features that were identified on the interior of the building, and I'll show you some plans in just a minute. Significance diagrams. There they are. Thanks, Elisa. We had the building laser scanned, so we have excellent and accurate base plans, which was really a wonderful place to start. So with those, we were able to study the building, study the original plans that the city provided us with, and understand which features date from 1913 and which were later additions and modifications. So these are significance diagrams. We prepare these for a lot of our projects as sort of a guide for where opportunities for change are and areas that should be kind of more focused areas for preservation. You can see the main entrance off of Magnolia on the left. North is up. And what we see here is that the main entrance is the most significant space in plan on the first floor, and then the main entrance vestibule inside the building. And really, in large part, the rest of the interior on the ground floor has been modified. The perimeter of the building is a significant historic feature, so you'll be able to see that in our diagrams moving forward.
So non-contributing means it does not contribute to the historic significance?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. And that's where we see the non-contributing areas, the gray areas, as areas of opportunity. And there's a lot of area of opportunity in this building, which is great, I think. The second floor where we are right now, you can see again, it's really just the front balcony, sort of portico, and then the main circulation spaces. And this is an image, this is a drawing of the roof. So the roof form and really the entire perimeter of the building, you'll see have been identified as primary significant. There are a couple of additions on the north side, as well as the south side of the building that are non-contributing. But we've looked at all of the windows. We have an understanding where the new windows are, where there are some very few, just a handful of original windows. But we'd like to make sure we take a close look at those and keep them in great shape if we can. So again, this is the north side of the building. You can see there had been several additions, several alterations over the years. This is an area that we might consider opportunities to clean it up. Perhaps this is the east side of the building, sort of facing the parking lot and the creek. One thing that at least we'll get into in just a moment is that there are a lot of windows to to wall ratio on this building. There are a lot of windows. It might not seem so here, but when you start to look at the elevation, there's very little area for structural kind of vertical loads to go from ceiling, from roof all the way down to foundation. So that's something our structural engineers is looking at, where we can create these load paths, windows that have been basically walls that have been turned into windows where the building has been modified and extended over the years, where originally you would have had a solid wall there and a place for a column to come down to the foundation. So this is the south elevation of the building where you can see the non-contributing accessibility ramp. We've had a chance to take a look at that from a code perspective and think that there are potentially some upgrades that could be made there as well to make it more accessible and to meet code. And next, and I'm going to pass it off to Elisa here, and she'll go into the findings for each of our consultants so we can get a kind of a big picture of where we are.
Can I ask just one
Yeah.
question? I was
Sure.
intrigued by the hose drying tower at the northeast corner of the building. I'd never heard that before. Where are we? Over
So
here, there's a hose drying.
yeah. So there are the two towers that face Magnolia, and then there's a hose drying tower from when this was the fire station.
I
Yeah.
never knew that.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Never heard
There
of a
you go.
hose drying tower.
All right, well, can you hear me okay? As Carolyn mentioned and Julian alluded to, we just completed the very first part of the project, which is the condition assessment of the historic structure report. And as Carolyn mentioned, it includes a brief history of the building. We really like to provide a context for the building when we study the building so that we understand what features of the building give it its character, so that in the future, when a project is done or is being considered, those features can remain and the building can continue to contribute to the downtown Larkspur Historic District. We also took a look at the spatial qualities of the building and also took a look at accessibility, the building materials, just to make sure that things were in good condition or if they needed repair. And all building systems, including the structural integrity of the building, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We took a look at the elevator and also civil, the utilities that serve the building. So we turned in a draft of our findings last week, and it's about 70 pages long. And today I'm just going to hit the highlights. So as far as the spatial assessment, we were finding that the interior space lacks cohesiveness, and it could do with a little bit better organized layout. The balcony, we feel like is a missed opportunity just because it's not publicly accessible, and perhaps in the future when we're thinking about reuses for the building, it could be more used by the public. And we also noted that there's only one compliant exit from this space. I believe that you probably have an exception here, but strictly speaking, it doesn't quite comply with current code. We also took a look at accessibility. The primary entrance of the building is not accessible, as you probably well know. And there is a ramp on the south side of the building, but it's too steep and it's too narrow to really comply with ADA. And on the interior, at the library, the stacks were split. There's that split level. And the children's area library is also not at the same level as the rest of the library. and the restrooms are not ADA compliant. So ideally, once you start thinking about renovating the building, you really want to provide equitable access. So that's something that we want to consider. The building has been well taken care of. The roofs in general are in good condition. There's one roof that is on the north side that looks like it's about reached its life expectancy and will probably need to get replaced. But overall, they are in pretty good shape. The deck at the balcony has also reached its life expectancy and probably needs to get paid attention to soon. The walls are in good condition. And the windows, both the historic windows and the windows that were recently installed are in good condition, as are the doors. Along the site, the stairs probably need attention, so does the retaining wall and the patio. All of those are, we would say, fair condition, maybe not quite, not quite fair, but will need attention soon. Structural, so our structural engineer took a look at the building, and the findings were, pretty much what you would expect for a wood frame building of this age. So there are some deficiencies. The diagonal sheathing is overstressed. So are the diaphragms at the roof and at the floors. There's not enough connections between the roof diaphragms and the floor diaphragms to the exterior walls. And the walls are not bolted to the foundation. So what does this mean? This means that we need to take a closer look at the building. So our structural engineer will be performing what we call a tier 2 evaluation. It includes computer modeling and is a little bit more sophisticated and will give us a more comprehensive picture as to which features really need to get seismically upgraded. We are also reaching out to a geotech engineer to find out what sort of liquefaction hazards that we need to consider. The mechanical system is undersized, and a lot of the mechanical units have reached their life expectancy as well. There's some areas in the building that also don't have quite adequate ventilation. Electrical, the biggest thing that we found here is that this building shares the electrical service with the fire station. So I think that long-term, if you want to renovate, that's something that might want to be considered. We might want to separate those. Plumbing, the water supply is adequate, but the natural gas supply will likely need to be upgraded. And there's no, I think this has been mentioned before, there's no fire sprinklers in the building. And the fire alarm system dates from 1992. We took a look at the elevator, and that dates from 1984, even before I got married. So anyway, so what that means here is that as parts break down, they're going to be harder to source. The elevator controller is also reached its life expectancy, as has the power unit. One thing that we did hear from our elevator consultant is that we probably need to think about adding the infrared detector at the doors. That's the detector that, will make the doors open up if it senses something there. And civil, so drainage for the building is fine. Water's being directed away from the building. Fire hydrants, it looks like there's enough to serve the building. I think there's 3 in the in close vicinity to the building. And we also took a look at fire apparatus access. So we are assuming that Magnolia Avenue would be used for the primary fire apparatus access, and that Rice Lane would be a secondary access point. And I think, as many of you know, probably the laterals for the building would need to get replaced at some point.
So a couple questions. Going back, the elevator, is it ADA compliant now? Or, I mean, what's the status? Would it have to be widened? Is there, beyond the fact that mechanically it can't be sourced?
I think for a major renovation project, you would want to consider making it bigger. To accommodate, for example, you may want to accommodate a gurney or something like that. So it's.
And then going back to the foundation, so the foundation is timber on concrete or on cinder, or what's it actually sitting on?
I believe that it is wood on, wood frame building on concrete, I think.
So it could be boltable. It's not like it's on cinder block or something.
Yes, so there, or we will, as we take a look at these deficiencies, there's certain deficiencies that you can take care of with, so, and that's one reason that the city asked us to take a look at 5 to 10 years. So if we want to keep reusing the building in the 5 to 10 years, there's certain things that you want to take care of anyway. And once you get beyond that, that's when you're, looking at, replacing the elevator and, doing something that's more significant.
Okay, thank you.
Gabe, as an example, my dad was in a motorized scooter because he had a stroke. He couldn't get in our elevator. So to come up to
Yeah.
see the mayor inauguration, he had to be pushed in a wheelchair because he couldn't fit in his scooter.
I'm sorry, can I just ask for clarification, something you just said? It says the elevator that they no longer kind of make the parts to fix it. So even in the short term, wouldn't we have to replace the entire elevator?
I think that that what our elevator consultant advised is that it's getting harder to source. So there may still be some parts out there where you can, fix things, but we need to be aware that as time goes by, it's going to get more and more difficult to find parts to replace certain features or, certain things that break down.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And so next steps. So we're going to take all this information that we've gathered and we're going to start taking a look at treatment recommendations, such as what we've been talking about, what we need to do to keep the building in use for the next 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20 and 50 to 100. And as Carolyn mentioned, we are also in the information gathering phase. We would love to be able to conduct a workshop where we can get ideas. We want to know what uses the city of Larkspur is interested in, what we should stay away from. So I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Carolyn.
No, just that, we have some ideas. We've thought about it. We've had a charrette in our office where we've got other architects to chime in and give their thoughts. But what we're really looking for are your thoughts, and then we can start to pull them all together with some concept sketches, and I think that's really the exciting part. So we look forward to that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, thanks. This one might be a little early. I think this might come with the, further analysis and treatments, but, my, sense of the, my takeaway from this is that, what we see on the outside is the highly significant historical part that we want to preserve. And almost everything inside is up for grabs as far as history goes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and then the other is just as a structural, besides the fact that the foundations aren't bolted, from the roofs, not ability to carry more load, to the sidewalls not really having, shear or load strength. It seems that any kind of interior work would have to seriously look at reconfiguring the outside shell. Is that fair at this point?
When you say reconfigure the outside shell, do you mean?
I mean, somehow, put beams. I mean, it's almost like you'd have to build a building inside a building.
So that's really where we're at right now. We will be having the structural engineer give us advice as to what can be done, whether it's just adding, like you mentioned, the bolt connections to the foundation. What options do we have? They've already told us that they don't like that the building has as many windows as it does. We're going to push back a little bit on that. But yes, we're looking to see what makes sense in the short term, 5 to 10 years, and then longer term.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for this work. This is the first comprehensive assessment, a true comprehensive assessment. In the beginning of it, I've seen of this building since I've been in this role for the last 11 years. It's been needed. We've had a lot of ideas and we've had a lot of thoughts about what the future of this building. We've had a lot of debates as a city council, but we haven't really had the data. And I'm looking forward to seeing more, particularly with all the comprehensive looking at ground structure and the building structure itself and the laser measurements, et cetera. I'm looking forward to that because I don't think any of us in this community has had that opportunity to really see the heart and bones of this building and get the true measurement and science behind it. So I appreciate that. I wonder if anybody on the planning has any, I mean, on Heritage has any thoughts.
With the work that's been done, this is what's really been needed. So congratulations on picking a great firm to do it.
I heard. During your presentation, I heard the phrase, if the building is being considered for reuse. Is there any talk of another option?
So to date, what we know is that the library is going to move out of the downstairs space when we build the new library over at Rose Lane. And so that becomes a vacant space and that becomes an opportunity for reuse. And so there's staff in other spaces in this building. There's a potential need for additional community meeting room. We have a council chambers that sometimes we have challenges with having enough room for some of our more attended meetings. And we have some staff that are in other buildings that are not in City Hall. So those are the kind of options that we've been working through, but we are interested in hearing from the community if they have other thoughts and what some reuse of the building would be. And again, we have those different scenarios where we're looking at, you know, the short term, the 5 to 10 years and the 10 to 25, and then the longer term. And so it may be that some of the grander reconfiguration of the building don't make sense in the 5 to 10 year kind of Band-Aid option. But if we're going to go through an exercise where we're looking at a design and they're pulling cost estimates together, you know, whether you open up this floor and open up the ceiling, maybe as it once was, or you reconfigure the downstairs, things such as how much assembly room you may have in the building can impact the amount of structural improvements that you're going to have to do. So that's why we'd like to get that feedback from the community on what do they envision this building would be used for, either in the 10-year or the 25, or if we can end up with a building that we know will last another 50 years, how should it be configured? And how should it not be configured? What do they not want to see? That way, that'll drive, because we don't want to do 20 different cost estimates for how we're going to renovate the building. We want to make our cost estimates based as closely as we can as to what we think the ultimate use for the building is going to be.
And Rich, I'm just going to add from my perspective, it is also going to have a lot to do with the price tag on it. You know, that if we're looking at a very large price tag for certain things and we just don't have the funds for it, that may limit our options. You know, so I think I'm looking forward to the future reports as far as what can be done and how much we anticipate it's going to cost and how we can move our budget around in order to do what the people want. You know, so I guess the next steps is to have the public outreach and, you know, hopefully we will get that on the calendar, you know, I'm assuming over the next 30 days. Does that sound realistic?
I think we were looking at sometime late October. Before Thanksgiving was the plan. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Looking forward to that. Any other questions or?
Thank you for this wonderful report. I think it's extremely exciting to be able to reimagine the space. And I think currently it's, as you all pointed out, it's not cohesive in terms of its layout. And I think it can be a lot better. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity as we're looking at, you know, renovating and maintaining or preserving the historic structure, that we get the opportunity to reimagine what the interior might be. I would like to, you know, as you're looking at the 50 to 100-year plans or the longer term plans, I would ask that you keep in mind sustainability. I think if we're trying to design a building for the next 100 years, I think it makes sense that we incorporate climate-friendly building materials, but also that we try to incorporate, renewable energy, zero net energy, zero net carbon, and how we might be able to offset our carbon footprint, things like that. I think that this is also a great opportunity for us to be able to, just create a great community space for our community, but know also that it's very climate and earth friendly.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone on either of the committees at this point?
Probably jumping the gun, but is there any budget at all that has, or monies that have been allocated at this point?
Total renovation.
For, no, for renovation.
I don't believe we have crossed that bridge yet. I think we're going to get some numbers back and then, see what we can do with the numbers that we get. Other.
But Carol, to your point, that's going to be key policymaking decision because as we get further along in this process, we'll know more data that way. But I just want everybody to know there are a lot of unfunded projects that a city like Larkspur has with a very limited budget. Just to lay it out there, we already have had a building study done of our 4 fire stations, but that we share for Central Marin Fire between us and Corte Madera, and that total estimate was $84 million, I believe, for the 4 fire stations. So we need to, once we get more information, there'll be some decision making as far as where our resources go or how we fund that. I've always said our real first responsibility to a community is health and safety, and our EMS, fire and emergency response, is right up there on the top. So we'll have to think some policy and priority making decisions between whether our fire stations or whatever is where the money goes. We'll see. But we haven't decided any of that now. I want to lay that out there because we don't have enough information yet. And that report about the fire stations was produced, I believe, a year ago. So who knows what those numbers are now.
Okay, let me go back and see anyone else on either of the committees have any other comments, questions, thoughts they would like to share? Seeing none, let me ask our city manager is standing in the back of the room. Do we do public comment at this point for this item? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Anyone in the public have any thoughts, comments, questions? Come on up. Yep, if anyone has any, come up. Is there a microphone we can?
Hi, everybody. This is really exciting, but this is first. This is the first that members of the public and you all have heard about this. And it's a major civic decision. It's beyond generational. And so what I'd like to suggest that it would be tragic to make a decision in October or January or February. I think you need a whole lot of public outreach and multiple public meetings, citywide mailings, social media, and not some sort of gray citywide mailing, something that people will want to read. So the idea of having the October 21st meeting is great. Good that you want to hear from stakeholders, but there are so many people out here who have no idea that this is happening, and they should be told. So, I mean, I don't see a November meeting as being good. That's like Thanksgiving, holidays, election, perhaps late January, maybe late February. I mean, to get that information out. And also more questions will come up. More information will be generated. So I'd like to suggest that this be thoughtfully done and not quickly, and that there be maximum public outreach. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I completely agree. And my thought is just that we kind of go with 2 tracks because we're still a long way from getting any kind of, numbers on this yet. I'm sure that's going to take a while. And while they're still looking at our options, we would also do the public outreach. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up. Yep. Come on up.
You get the 2 Jones, 2 ex-mayors.
All good. That's
Joan Lubomirsky,
okay.
Joan Lundstrom, Larkspur. I second Joan Lubomirsky's comments. She's always on the in the council consistently said the public is part of your decision making, and it's how you reach out to the public. And I was very pleased that Turnbull Associates pointed out the workshops, that this is part of it. But there needs to be numbers of workshops, because it will come down to the policymakers hearing from all the community. And it's like other major issues. Everybody will say, I never heard about it, I don't know. But unless you do a very consistent, targeted outreach and have handouts and what the options are, because what happens in terms of use of the city hall is part of it. But it also, I think it's important too, because this type of project, a unique project, will take the whole community coming together. And this is a work together with the community. It isn't just the council. It isn't a border commission. It's everybody coming together, because there might be creative financing ways for older buildings, and to find out how other communities have handled how to preserve a historic for public use building. And that's where I applaud the council for taking the steps to make this a very comprehensive look, which needed to be done for years that we served on the council. So this is a great step for everybody. And I applaud the next steps, keeping public outreach in mind and workshops, so that you hear and everybody has the basics, so they can do the homework too. Everybody needs to do their homework, because it's going to be not easy decision, but this is a unique property, a unique public property that we all need to work together to come to a decision. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Other public comments? Looking around, seeing none. Let me go online. Allison, is there anyone with their hand up? Any public comments online at this point? Absolutely. If you would like to comment and you are watching at home, please raise your hand and we'd be happy to call on you and hear what you have to say. Okay, seeing no public comment at home, seeing no public comment here, I will close public comment. I will bring it back to the two boards here. Any other comments or thoughts before we wrap up this item?
Oh, one thing I would just like to reiterate that we really appreciate the city council creating this joint meeting. And I personally look forward to having more of these sort of workshop sessions, because I just think this is fantastic to hear Page and Turnbull's report together.
I agree. And I think that's one of our goals, is to have more of these joint meetings moving forward. So yes, thank you. All right, anyone else? And seeing none, let us close business item 2.2. Now let's move to business item 2.3, appointments to Larkspur Committee to select the city's panel of historic architects. Do we get a staff report on exactly what we're doing here?
Yes, thank you, and good evening again. So as you may be aware, in 2012, the city issued a request for qualifications for historic architects to work with the city to evaluate projects from property owners. That resulted in the selection of two firms, Jerry Holon and Associates and Garavalia Architecture. And we are at a point now where both of the contracts for those firms have elapsed, and it's been a number of years since we've issued an RFQ. So we are going to be issuing a new RFQ to invite panel members to participate in and to generate a new panel of historic architects. So the point of this item this evening is to have one member from each body selected to a selection committee that would work with members of staff in reviewing whatever proposals we have submitted. So I'm available for any questions should you have them. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Yes.
What is the composition of the selection committee? And where did it come from?
So the plan is to have 2 members, or 1 member from each, so 2 members of elected and appointed bodies, and then myself and the community development director, Lisa Simonian on the panel.
I would say, you know, in history, and this goes back 10 years or more, that this board, the Historic Preservation Board, had a major role in the selection of the consultant, the historic architect that would be working with this board. And for us to have one place on this selection committee sounds inadequate.
If memory serves, in 2012, it was 1 member of that board on the, it was 3 people in total. It was the planning director, a member of the Heritage Preservation Board, and I can't recall. Oh, and a planning commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments from anyone for staff?
I wanted to clarify the payment for this. Does the staff hire the consultants or are the homeowners the ones that always hire them?
The city contracts with consultants, but the homeowner is on the hook for the payment. But there's very little interaction between the homeowner and the consultant through the process. Generally.
And if the board wants to talk to the consultant, who pays for that?
So part of this RFQ, one of the included items is that the consultant would have to attend meetings. So if they have a project that they've worked on and they have a report, they would be there to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
So just so I'm clear, this selection committee would be selecting a number of, whatever, 1 to 3 firms that is available so that homeowners have the choice of who to go to if they have a historic preservation project, or is it for the use of the city? Like what are we selecting, the architectural firms for?
Yes, I mean, generally they are used for private projects when
Uh-huh.
somebody owns a residence and they need
Right.
their changes evaluated. Sometimes homeowners may not choose to use a city consultant. They may hire their own, in
Okay,
which case
so
we
they
would
can-
have these consultants peer review that work.
Okay, so homeowners are allowed to choose their own consultant if they want?
Well, generally staff would secure quotes from the consultant and provide the homeowner with information on, what their submittal package listing, their qualifications and everything. But the homeowner would choose which firm or entity they would want to have participate in the process.
Okay.
But this RFQ is to choose an architecture firm that will represent the city and the Heritage Committee when they're having work done for heritage preservation work. I think that's what's unclear. Because that contract is up. I think that's the unclear part.
So the city does not have one historical architect, and I think we want to be careful
Okay.
not to suggest that. Currently, the city has a panel, and the panel has 2 historical architecture firms that were under contract and the contract expired. The way we've been operating since 2012 is that architects are retained for 2 purposes off of the panel. They're retained by staff to do work for the city, it's usually work that the board wants. The other thing that we do is we contract with architects from the panel on behalf of applicants, and the applicant pays for that. And then that analysis is done so the board can review that analysis. Having a panel too has been somewhat limiting in terms of providing the property owner with some options in terms of price and time. This is unusual, actually. Most of the other parts of the city where we offer where we require a property owner to pay for us to bring in a consultant, we tend to have a number of choices available to the property owner. So the property owner has a chance to say, this is my budget and this is how much time I can afford in my project. So we would like to build as comprehensive and broad a panel of qualified architects as we can, so that when the staff is talking to an applicant, they can say, we can solicit 2, 3, 4 proposals if you would like, and that way you can give us your feedback on what fits your personal budget. Everyone on the panel is qualified to do this work. So it's really to empower the community with more choice. It's still all managed by the city. And I think Alex's early answer is, you could say, I don't want to deal with the panel. I have an architect I prefer, so I'm going to use them. But then you're going to pay double because we're going to charge the applicant for the peer review. And that's a choice people can make too. This is all about giving people choice. I'm the city manager, but I didn't say that.
All right, thank you. Other questions or comments from anyone from either of the councils?
I would like to just add one thing that oftentimes homeowners aren't familiar with our historic architects. And the first time they deal with it is when they've come to the planning desk and they know they have to commission a historic review. And often their decision is guided by their architect. And sometimes architects have preferred historic architects that they would like to work with. So I think choice is good. I think, you know, we've been really happy with Jerry Holen and Garavalia. Are you considering looking at third or fourth firms, or how many applicants have you gotten? For
Well, my understanding is that the purpose of tonight is to form the board that is going to make those decisions. I don't think that's kind of a city council decision. I think that's going to be the board, the subcommittee's decisions.
Is there any reason, can I ask, is there any reason why we have 4 people on the board? Or I mean, is there any reason why we couldn't have 5 just to have a tiebreaker maybe?
I don't know how we came up with the number 4. Maybe you could explain that?
I think we want, sounds like Dan wants to.
So I just want folks to understand, this is so abnormal, but we're doing it because we recognize the unusual nature of the historic architecture role. We don't normally, staff does not normally involve council members and committee members in the hiring of consultants. That's what you pay us as professionals to do. But we recognize that this person interacts with a board that has a high profile community facing role. So we thought it would be helpful, as did the 2012 staff, to incorporate some of our community leadership into the process to make sure that the people that we're selecting off for this panel are not way off from community values.
So to the mayor, I would like to volunteer as a council member and on that committee. So, because I'm pretty familiar with the process, having been here for a while.
I would like to nominate Vice Mayor Way. Can I get a second? Okay. Can we get a vote on the council? We can just, everyone say aye? Aye, okay. Is there anyone that you would like to nominate to join her? Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Great.
So I believe we have our answers. Does the staff have its direction at this point?
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic.
Oh,
and public comment. Let's see if there's anyone from the public who has would like to comment on this issue. Let's first go to people here in chambers. Opening up to public comment. Come on up if you have a public comment.
Give it to Allison.
Having to do with meeting. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Good evening. And thank you for your time tonight. I'm Jerry Holen. I have been the historic consultant here for the last 12 years, and I'm here at the invitation of some of the heritage members. And I'm here mainly to speak to the staff's recommendation of hiring 1 or 2 or more consultants to what they're calling a panel. I think, as you know, Larkspur is a very desirable city to live in, and it's mainly because it's preserved its big homes and its downtown historic district. And I think this preservation is a direct result of the strong program we have here in Larkspur. And I think that the idea of having 2 or more consultants really diminishes the program, mainly because it gives the developer or the homeowner or staff a choice between consultants, which I agree with, choice is good, but it influences the review process. The reviews should be impartial. And the whole reason for having a city historic consultant is to have objective reviews and evaluations consistently prepared by the same professional whose task it is to preserve the city's resources. Using 2 different historical consultants, no matter who selects them, promotes the idea that the city and/or the Heritage Board has different standards for different projects. And this gives the wrong community, I think, to the wrong message to the community and anyone thinking of purchasing a home here. It implies that the review process is negotiable and subjective. And I can see future applicants being unhappy with an outcome and requesting another review by a different consultant. And there might be other unforeseen consequences with the proposal. Larkspur has one of the best preservation ordinances in the Bay Area. And the reason for that is that planning staff has retained its historic consultants so that they consistently reviewed projects and utilized past precedents. My predecessor, Dan Peterson, was hired by the board and worked as the city's consultant for over 30 years until his death in 2011. The wonderful historic program in Larkspur is in large part a result of his continued and long involvement. The city's resources received consistent reviews in accordance with the board's direction. It also established strong precedents for future preservation work in the city. And for the past 12 years, I've also advised the staff and the board with professional recommendations in keeping with Dan's established procedures and in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards. And I think the integrity of the preservation program and its process would be best served by one consultant. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there other public comments? Seeing none, let me go on to Zoom. If you have a public comment, please raise your hand. There
Pardon
is no
me?
public comment online. Sorry. Did you have something else? No.
No.
Okay, no public comment online, no public comment here. I will close public comment. Any other questions or thoughts from anyone on either of the committees? Yes.
Yeah, I had a quick one. I've been first, I just want to thank the Heritage Board. I didn't get to do that earlier. I think many of the, ideas you brought up, like, QR codes for historic sites, I'm really encouraged to hear that. And I agree that a lot of the charm of Larkspur is this area. My question was based on the last public comment. I can see the need for consistency, and maybe either staff or the board can kind of enlighten me the trade-offs. It seems like if a homeowner wants to go outside of the review board, they can do that anyway. And what is there to enforce consistency, and what would increasing the number of assigned architects do to that?
Exactly.
So all heritage, the municipal code contains, standards for Larkspur's local inventory, and the Secretary of the Interior maintains standards in general. So any consultant would be justifying a project against those standards. That's where they would find their consistency. I have not found that multiple consultants is an issue. Generally, if you have, as was mentioned by the previous commenter, if you have one consultant, say one thing, and you have another consultant say another, then we are into a much deeper process under CEQA to really get to the bottom of it. It's not, I have these 2 competing reports and I'm gonna pick which one works for me. It becomes a much bigger issue at that point.
Gabe, to your point, I think we may be getting ahead of ourselves with that question, because if an RFQ only has 1 or 2 firms that actually submit information, we may be limited to having 1 or 2. We just don't know yet. That's what the video.
What was that?
Sorry, Larry.
So here, do you want to?
I just think to Gabe's question, we may be just getting ahead of ourselves, because the RFQ will be put out, and whoever applies a historic architecture, then the subcommittee, and we may only have 1, or we may have 2, we may have 12. I don't know. But we're getting ahead of ourselves for what's the qualifying amount, and we're running late on time.
And yeah, so that will be up to the subcommittee. And with that, to our city manager.
Well, I'm a little concerned about some phraseology that just occurred, if that's a word. So let's be real careful to suggest that licensed historical architects are not professional, which was an insinuation in the last comment that people would shop around and just get the answer that they want. These are all professional people that we're suggesting be solicited into this panel. We have a panel now. We don't have one architect now. The architect doesn't work for the board. Mr. Othon is the professional whose name ultimately is responsible for the staff work. He's responsible because he's been assigned the task of signing off on whatever a consultant does. So I hope folks don't get confused. We do have one gatekeeper that makes sure that staff work's done correctly. The consultant is an extension of staff. It is not an employee of the board. And I think that's gotten a little confused in that last public comment.
Thank you for clarifying that. And with that, I will close this item and I will adjourn this joint meeting and move to our next meeting for City Council. So thank you, everyone. And if you're interested, stick around. Okay, welcome to the next meeting, regular meeting of the City Council. We have already done the pledge. Would you like another roll call?
Member Andre. Here. Councilmember Paulson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Way.
Here.
Mayor Candell.
I am here, which brings us to the next item, which is public comment. Public comment is for anything that is not on the agenda. If you have a comment for something that is not on the agenda, feel free to come on up and tell us what you got.
Hi.
And
My
please
name is-
introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Jennifer Seraphin. I'm a resident of Larkspur and I live in Madrone Canyon right here. I'm here on an issue. I'm not sure you're the right people, but you're the only people I know to ask. Today, I left the canyon and saw that one of the heritage redwood trees had been cut down entirely in the entrance to the canyon. My husband stopped by City Hall today to ask how that came to be, and the answer was it must have been PG&E. And I just have some concerns because we all know that PG&E is cutting lots of trees throughout the community. Lots of that's for good reason, for fire prevention, et cetera. But I don't know whether the rules the rules applying to heritage trees were followed. I don't recall seeing a ribbon around the tree. I don't recall seeing anything alerting us. I don't live within 300 feet, so I wouldn't have necessarily gotten a notice. But I wanted to just kind of ask you, how is the city handling the PG&E and monitoring what they're doing and making sure that they're following the rules? And one reason I raise this issue is I just don't want to wait and have another tree cut if it's just that PG&E is making these decisions unilaterally.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Unfortunately, we're not supposed to respond directly to public
Oh,
comments
okay.
during public comments because it's not on the agenda, but maybe staff can give you somebody to talk to or reach out to get answers for that.
We'll get back to you about whether PG&E cut down that tree. We'll have to confirm it, but I will state for the record that PG&E is exempt from the heritage tree ordinance. So if they've decided under their codes that they need to cut a tree down, we can't actually stop them from doing that.
If I could ask where that exemption is, because I did read the section today and I read all of the exemptions.
It's
and-
not in our code. It's in the state. They're my city attorney saying it.
Section 12.16.090 of the municipal code provides that public utilities doing business subject to the jurisdiction of the Public Utilities Commission that are removing trees for public safety reasons pursuant to a PUC program are exempt from the heritage tree removal process.
So the city has absolutely no ability to intervene and stop PG&E from cutting down these redwoods that are very,
Yes.
very valuable to the city. I just want to say it is a very instrumental part of our city. This road, it's in every photo that we have and it's a beautiful part of the city. So
And while I appreciate that and agree with that, I think we are not allowed to have conversations about something not on the agenda because people weren't notified about it. So if this is something, either you could reach out to staff and you can deal with this individually, that's fine. If we need to put it on the agenda, on a future agenda, to discuss this, I'd be fine with that as well. And I'll leave it up to staff to figure out the best way to handle it.
Okay, and who would the appropriate staff be? Because we did come to City Hall today to ask this question and the answer was it's PG&E, which was not a satisfactory answer, at least to us.
Okay, and maybe staff can tell, is there some place where these questions could be directed or some person they'd be directed to?
I'll have to follow up with staff to find out who the staff person was that interacted with them. I don't know who that was. That's not the way I would have liked to have had that question answered.
Okay, so moving forward, can I ask if somebody has a concern or a question such as that? Is there someone they should email? So who would you direct them to so they can get an appropriate answer? Would it be city attorney? I mean, who would you direct them to?
Probably me.
Okay. All right. So that would be Dan Schwartz.
Look forward to it.
But,
Oh, and I
you know,
be acrimonious about the situation,
It's-
but I am concerned and I just don't want to not say something and have it happen more and more if there is something that can be done.
It is a legitimate
So,
question and a
sure.
legitimate concern.
Yeah.
But we're just prohibited from really engaging in that right now because it's not on the agenda. So we're not really allowed to be trying to resolve those issues. But I
Okay.
can refer you to Dan offline. And if you are unsatisfied and we need to put this on a future agenda and talk about it in city council, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay. And
So-
Mr. Schwartz, would you also be able to help me if
Yeah,
with
but
the
let me,
question of-
may I make a public comment?
Of course.
Mayor?
Of course.
You know, some days there's a pretty bright red mark on my forehead when you say PG&E and PUC in the same sentence. I mean, the general answer to most questions is PUC rules and trump everything. So
And that may be the answer. I mean, all I'm
just letting
saying,
you know, there's my public comment.
oh yeah, all I'm saying is that we can't really talk about it. So I'm just trying to say,
I understand.
if you guys can handle it offline, great.
We
If you
will.
can't and we need to agendize it, that's great too. But we just can't do the back and forth because that's what the rules prohibit us from doing.
okay.
Okay?
So who wants to chain themselves to a tree with me? Thank you.
Sure. Other public comments? Okay, anyone else in the public want to make a comment during a public comment session? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Marjan Abadian. I am a resident of 325 Villa Paz. And Villa Paz is city that we are encountering a lot of problem with drainage. And we have been experiencing more water as recent years has been. And there has been a project of drilling, bypassing a passage that we had from Villa Paz to Corte Alejo in order for the water to go down. Now we have drilled against the slope to go down the hill from another way. So right now we're experiencing other problem that Mr. Skinner is gonna address. But my real problem is that I think that we need to have a very comprehensive plan and long-term plan for drainage, because we are getting water from Bret Hart as cascading down our drainage system, which is overflowing into our properties. And we are seeing landslide with the history of landslide. So what I am suggesting is, instead of putting Band-Aid here and there where the water flows somewhere, to look in general, what do we need to have? And to have certain regulation that they are not adversaries, i.e. we have a neighbor that has a house in our neighborhood, which is up the hill, and she has a house down the hill. Up the hill, we have been told that the water that is coming in the back of our houses in the gutter needs to now to be pumped out against the slope to that street, which cannot absorb already our rainwater. And the same neighbor downstairs in Greenbrae has been told you should never pump your water. Any water should not come from your house. So we need to have a comprehensive plan of drainage and to look into it. That's my comment.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that comment. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Other public comment? Seeing none, I will go online. Is there any public comment online?
Yes, caller, it's your turn for public comment.
James Holmes at Larkspur. Following up on what the prior speaker said with regard to cutting of the heritage redwood, I was unaware of that and don't know which one that was. However, a similar situation arose respecting PG&E about 10 years ago, and when PG&E went around considering the possibility of cutting quite a large number of redwoods in the canyon, and I alerted the Park and Rec director, who was then responsible for tree issues, and he said he was immediately going to contact PG&E and find out what their plans were and seek to discuss it with them. And I believe that PG&E is required to some degree to consult with landowners who express concerns about that. The upshot of that procedure was that PG&E backed off from its dramatic tree cutting proposals and put in a lot of those yellow guy wires, that structures that you see downtown. So in the past, there has been a very vigorous response from the city to follow up on proposals to cut redwood trees downtown and to express the city's concerns with that process and to explore alternatives. And I believe that process should be reinstated and pursued to prevent this kind of thing from happening any further.
Okay, thank you. Allison, is there anyone else with public comment online with their hands up?
I'm looking for any additional raised hands from our audience members. And there's no further public comment.
Okay, no public comment online, no public comment in the chamber. I will close public comment. And we will move to item number 3, presentations, which there are none. So I will then move to item number 4, approval of the consent calendar. Let me ask, is there anyone on the council who would like to discuss an item on the consent calendar? Seeing none, let me put it out to the public in chambers. Is there anyone here who would like to discuss an item on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will put it online. Is there anyone online who would like to discuss an item on the consent calendar? If so, please raise your hand.
I'm looking for any raised hands from the Zoom audience members. And there's no public comment.
Seeing none, I will ask, can I get a motion for the consent calendar?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Andre?
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Way?
Yes.
Mayor Candell?
Yes. Okay, moving to item number 5, the city manager's report. Can we get a report, Mr. City Manager?
Council members, I'm really thrilled to let you know that last night, the Planning Commission on a 4-0 vote approved the design review, approved the permits under design review that were requested by the city for the library project at the Commons. And so as a result of that approval, the project will now begin to move toward construction phase. However, as we've mentioned several times, the way that design build contract was set up, there's opportunities to buy additional items for the project. And in fact, you authorized a significant one when you awarded the final contract in February because you added the community rooms to the base project. Now we'll be coming back. You may recall Mr. Skinner had a list of various items that we wanted to see where our value engineering process would land with the budget, what there was capacity for, and what monies might still be available to us or through our fundraising partner. So that's conversation, which is a key final piece of what the project's going to be, occurs in October, starting on your next meeting, which is October 1st. And that's my second report, which is in recognition of the Rosh Hashanah holiday beginning on your normally scheduled meeting of October 2nd. We've moved it forward one day. So folks, please make note, the council meeting is on Tuesday, October 1st, rather than our regular day. And I really encourage folks, we did this last night. We heard from a lot of folks in the community, very interested in sustainability possibilities for the building that aren't in the base project right now. And we had a lot of folks who wanted more information about biodiversity and landscaping. And so I strongly encouraged them to attend because you'll be making those decisions as part of budgetary considerations at your October meetings.
Fantastic. And will we have some type of report from the foundation about what funds are available for?
So I will speak with the president, Ann Morrison, to see if she's prepared to talk about where they are in their fundraising efforts. I've gotten a very positive feeling from my conversations with her that the foundation's optimistic they're going to make a significant contribution to the landscaping part of the project.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, moving on to city council members' reports. Would anybody like to make a report? Gabe, nothing? Catherine?
No, let's move along.
Hang on. So I have two quick things. One is regarding the project on 1251 South Alicio. We have spoken to the police chief and we are interested in getting more information. So I am going to ask our city manager to please relay to the police chief and to put on the agenda for an October meeting if we could have a report prepared comparing the police calls, services, and resources being used on that property compared to the similar property in Corte Madera, and see how they stack up against each other so we can make some decisions moving forward. Mr. City Manager, did I give you enough information to do that?
You did, Mr. Mayor, but I'm a little more in tune with what it means to say the project at 1251. So I thought I might elaborate for the public.
Okay.
That the mayor is referring to the county-owned and operated through a third party Project Home Key housing, permanent housing for formerly unhoused individuals. There's a similar project in Corte Madera. They're both within our police authorities jurisdiction. And so we have an opportunity to talk about pros and cons of the two properties.
Perfect. Thank you.
And if I may, I'd like to just elaborate on it. Since Project Home Key came to the Greenbrae area about 18 months ago, as a county project, the mayor and myself have been on the working regularly on the Public Safety Committee that's been meeting for the last year and a half about this project. And we're expressing some concerns with what's happening for the utilization of our Central Marin Police Authority there, which is indicating why we would like to have a report. We're very tuned in to the activities there and how it's influencing the community and the potential in which we can have law enforcement better managed. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I just wanted to report out, I know e-bikes has been a hot topic. Just wanted to report out that we met with the police chief and we are making significant progress in the use of e-bikes, I don't want to say illegally, but by people who should not be using them. And they're using the wrong class of e-bikes. So we're making progress with that. And we look forward to, in the near future, giving a more thorough report on that. I just want to let people know that we were dealing with that and we are hearing positive things. Having said that, that's the end of my report. So we now move on to public hearings. Public hearings, let's start with 7.1. City of Larkspur Community Facilities District CFD number 2024-1. Larkspur Lagoon Bulkhead Replacement Project. Can we get a staff report on that, please?
This is part two, step two in a process that you initiated at a prior meeting. The purpose of this project is, purpose of this item is to consider forming the Larkspur Community Facilities District CFD number 2024-1. So Community Facilities District is essentially a instrument the government can set up so that an area can consider a special assessment or a tax to result in some sort of project that they want to accomplish. In this case, the proposal that you talked about at a fairly in-depth conversation at your prior meeting is a partnership between the city and the Property Owners Association for the Larkspur Marina neighborhood, such that we would use the CFD vehicle so that the property owners would have the ability to assess themselves to fund needed repairs to the bulkhead, essentially the wall that retains the water, keeps it out of the backyards of the homes and keeps everything stable. You have in front of the staff report, and I saw there's a presentation. Mark, are you going to speak to the material in the presentation? So this is Mark Pressman, who's the city's municipal advisor.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. You've already heard some of this at the prior meeting. However, for the benefit of the public that may not have heard that, I thought I'd give a quick overview of the program that has been developed.
And I'm sorry, can I just ask you to just move the mic a little closer to your mouth so everybody can hear you? Thanks. Appreciate that.
Is that better?
A little bit, not much.
Is it better?
Always fighting with the mics.
Thank you.
So again, we'll go through it relatively quickly, and then during the hearing, we can always come back to review. How we got here, the Lagoon bulkhead is over 50 years old. It's far beyond its expected lifetime. Its integrity is failing with ongoing deterioration, and the failing bulkhead is an increasing threat to safety, the livability of the homes, the home values, both individually and the neighborhood itself. There's a possibility of subsidence, slippage, foundation damage, and earthquake and flooding. The Property Owners Association has retained the services of an engineer to evaluate the bulkhead. The engineering findings are that at least 50% of the bulkhead is failing and that it needs replacement. The recommendation is to do it as a single project as opposed to piecemeal for a number of reasons. The new bulkhead would provide a number of benefits to each of the homeowners and the vicinity in general. The engineering is currently, I guess I'm not keeping up here, I'm sorry. So the engineering is currently in the process of evaluating and design. And so they're in process. The Property Owners Association has evaluated a number of different possible means of financing the facility, the bulkhead. And they've concluded that a community facilities district is the best alternative. So we initiated the formation of the community facilities district at the city at your prior council meeting. It will be a city run as far as the finances go, but the Property Owners Association and a construction management firm will assume the primary responsibility for the day-to-day work and that sort of thing. There's a timeline, and we'll get to a schedule later in this presentation. But we will, after tonight, the next item, major item will be a March 4th, 2025 election. And if that election is successful, the construction funds are expected to be available in the second quarter of 2025, which pretty much coincides with when we expect the engineering to be completed and then be ready to go out for construction bids. The impact on property owners is that this could be considered to be similar to an insurance policy to save and protect the integrity of their homes and their property. We expect to issue the bonds over a 35-year period to minimize the payments by property owners and also to spread the cost out to future property owners. If a homeowner is here for the next 5 years, and somebody else comes in after 5 years, they will share in the payments on that improvement. The cost will be spread based on the front footage on the bulkhead. The annual tax levy will be on the property tax roll, And it will be enough to pay debt service on the bonds as well as administration costs, annual administration costs, which are estimated to be about $25,000. We are initially overfunding the project. And the reason for that is if we are short of funds, we don't want to have to go through this process again, which amounts to about 6 to 9 months of formation for a new CFD. So we're overfunding the project and presuming that there will be surplus funds at the end of the day, then we'll use those surplus funds to buy down and pay down the size of the excess bond issue. The construction is hopefully going to be completed before the 26-27 tax roll. And if that is in fact the case, that resizing downward of the size of the bond issue and the tax levy will be done in time for the first property owner tax payment, which is not until December of 2016. That's 2 years away. 26, sorry. Then here we have kind of small print, sorry, but we have a schedule that has been distributed to the Property Owners Association. It's on their website so that property owners or affected people can go there and see what the timing looks like. And then the next slide is a breakdown of the costs of the project. We're looking at doing $22 million of bonds. 11 million of that is hard costs. Again, these are projections based on the current engineering, which is not complete as yet. We have an almost $3 million contingency. That's part of the oversizing of the bond issue. Engineering, design, and other things, and that all adds up to about 18 million. We have capitalized interest of a little over 2 million. That pays the debt service on the bonds to the investors that buy the bonds from the date the bonds are issued, which would be approximately second quarter of 2025 through September of 2026, after which the property owners will be on their property tax bill. We have an allowance for a reserve fund, and we have costs of issuance and so forth, and that totals up to the 22 million. And I think that's the end of my presentation, and you can open the public hearing and will be available for questions. We have the bond attorney on Zoom attending the meeting. We also have a representative of the engineering firm on Zoom also. So we've got the president of the Property Owners Association, as well as a number of members of the Property Owners Association here, and myself to be available to respond to questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Let me start out by asking if anyone on the council has any questions for staff. Okay, let's open it up to the public. Sorry?
I mean, this is part 2 for us.
Yeah, we've right. So we've gone through this already. So which is why we don't have any questions. Anybody from the public have any questions that they'd like to ask? Any comments? Seeing none, going to Zoom. Anyone on Zoom, if you have any comments or questions or would like to say something regarding this item, please raise your hand.
I'm looking for the raised hands from our Zoom audience members. And there's no public comment.
Okay, I will then close public comment, bring it back to council. Any questions? Yes.
So my question is to city manager. In my time on the council, this is the first we've ever had of this type of arrangement. And I know the due diligence has been done. We've worked with this bond fund with our own issues and our own things. Can you tell us in assurance that you feel very confident that this is well organized and that there will be no liability to the city and the other residents for this resolution?
Yeah, so you're correct in the sense that we've never done this type of arrangement where the ultimate asset is a private asset.
Right.
So that's the unusual part about this.
Yeah.
We have set up these types of assessment districts in the past, for example, neighborhoods that wanted to fund the undergrounding of electrical wires. We've used this type of vehicle to do really small assessments. We have another unusual vehicle taxing vehicle to work with this same neighborhood, but it's the homes that have docks out on the creek and in their parlance for the neighborhood, it's the outer and the inner houses. So so we have some history actually of a different type of arrangement. Going specifically to your question, the risk, if you will, to the city is that there'd be some sort of wild default that would result in it boomeranging onto our reputation, not us financially, but our reputation. And I would submit that would mean Larkspur was experiencing a catastrophic event across the whole city. So we'd have bigger problems. So that's how little I feel this risk is, because they're securing this as an assessment by vote. And so these bonds will be secured.
And then my follow-up to that is it requires 2/3 or of the properties that are affected within this to vote positively for it. What's the alternative if it does not pass?
Well, I'm just gonna get technical for a moment, just for the record, that because there are more than 12 registered voters within the proposed boundaries of the CFD, this is actually a voter election, not a property owner election. You are correct that it requires 2/3, but it will require 2/3 affirmative votes from those voting in the election, and that's going to be a voter election rather than a property owner election.
Got it. Okay, that's all I had.
And I just had one question. I just want to make sure my summary of events is there are a group of residents in Larkspur who need the city's help because they can't kind of raise this money without us. And we are able to help them with little or no risk to the city. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is this is unusual. So before other neighborhoods immediately right down here, you have a privately held asset that is fundamental to sort of the structure of the entire neighborhood, which then leads to the value of the neighborhood, which we do have a vested interest as a community that all our neighborhoods retain their value. And so it's a little different from some other projects that neighborhoods might be looking to fund, where I think we might look more skeptically about whether the public should be involved with it.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, I have no further questions. Any other questions on council? Can I get a motion? Yeah, we had public comment.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll move to pass this.
Yeah, we closed the public hearing. Yeah, closed public hearing. Can I get a motion?
Okay, once again, move to pass the City of Larkspur Community Facilities District number 2024-1.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Sky, was that sufficient? Okay, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Andre,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Way.
Yes.
Mayor Kendall.
Yes. Okay, closing item 7.1. Going to item 7.2, resolution of necessity. Authorizing eminent domain proceedings to condemn a permanent right-of-way easement over certain real property located on a portion of Rose Lane. Can we get a staff report on that?
Yes, good evening. Public Works Director Julian Skinner. So as you mentioned, the next item on your agenda is a public hearing to adopt a resolution of a necessity authorizing eminent domain for a portion of Rose Lane. And so just some context, this matter before you is related to the city's new library that the city manager referenced before. There was a planning commission last night, and specifically the property in question, subject to the proposed eminent domain, is a permanent right-of-way easement over a portion of the private street Rose Lane. So there is a specific action that's requested tonight. That's that you receive the staff report and then you open a public hearing, including receiving public comments. And then we would ask you to adopt the resolution of necessity that authorizes eminent domain proceedings for acquiring a permanent right-of-way over the portion of Rose Lane. Here's an exhibit of the library site. So this is oriented with north up. And so at the top of the page horizontally, you have Doherty Drive, and then there's the proposed library in the green area there, and then Orchid, which is one of the streets in the Rose Lane neighborhood. And then I've got highlighted here the Rose Lane. So that's the street that intersects Doherty, where the traffic signal is if you're heading into town just before you get to Magnolia. And that and the other streets within that neighborhood are private streets. And so as you can see, the library design that we're working on at the moment has its access proposed to come from Rose Lane, is where the blue arrow is. This is the technical document that shows the exact area that the city would be doing the permanent right-of-way easement over. It's not all of Rose Lane, it's just Rose Lane up until where the intersection modifications would occur for the new library driveway. So it's about 16,000 square feet. The right-of-way width there is about 53 feet wide, so it's a 300-foot length into Rose Lane. It's actually part of a larger parcel, so all of the main streets in the Rose Lane development are one parcel. It's a private street, and that parcel is owned by the HOA or the Rose Lane Master Association. And so that parcel, which is all the streets combined, is highlighted in blue here. It's about 3.4 acres. The portion of it that we're proposing to obtain a permanent right-of-way easement over is highlighted in yellow up at the top left, and that represents the portion of Rose up to and including the intersection with the new library driveway. So some history. So we did have some meetings with the Rose Lane Master Association. And then ultimately we sent them an offer letter, a purchase proposal for this portion of the right of way. We've had some negotiations back and forth, but to this point, we have not been able to agree on a price for the purchase. And so as we're trying to move forward with the library project, time is becoming of the essence. As you know, we have grant funding with the library and we need to move the process along. And so on September 3rd, we did send the Rose Lane Master Association a notice letting them know that we were proposing to have the resolution of necessity at tonight's council meeting. And so by adopting this resolution, you'll be authorizing us to file eminent domain to acquire the subject property. In order to do that, in order to adopt that resolution, you have to make certain findings at this public hearing. They are listed on this slide here. And for this process, a 2/3 majority of the council vote is required to adopt the resolution. The findings you need to make are that there's public interest and necessity require the project. That the project is planned or located in a manner that will be compatible, the greatest public good, least private injury, that the property is required for the project, and that we have made an offer as required by the government code section 7267.2. So to those points, the library project has been contemplated for some time. It's gone through a number of public processes, including it's included in the capital improvement program, and it was just approved by the design review commission last night. The plans are moving forward. We do have grant funding. It has a deadline of March 26th by which the funds have to be expended. So we need to keep moving the project forward. The public right-of-way covers a portion of land that is already encumbered by a street and utilities and regular things that you would find in a street. So we're not taking another type of property and turning it into a street. It's already a street. The city would simply like the public right-of-way rights over that street. And also find that the public right-of-way is required for the public access to the property. As I showed, the only driveway into the property is off of Rose Lane. The amount of compensation, I did mention that we made an offer to the HOA and they have not accepted that offer. That's not part of the action here tonight. What you're authorizing us to do is take possession of the property. And then we can continue to have negotiations. We may get to a point where we agree on a price, or ultimately down the road, if we still can't agree, then we could end up in court and arguing over what that fee should be for the property. But how much that property costs is not the subject of your resolution of necessity. It's just that the city needs this property and we want to take action so that we can have control of it now or within the amount of time that it takes after we file the notice. So also tonight we have Laura Beaton, I think is on the Zoom call. She's the city's counsel, legal counsel for this process. And our city attorney is here. So that's the end of my presentation. And so I would like to see if either of the legal counsels want to add any additional information before we turn it over for questions. And then I would ask that you open up a public hearing after that and then consider the resolution.
Okay, so let me ask, would either of our esteemed attorneys like to comment on this before we open this up to questions?
I have nothing to add here. I think it was well covered. I assume you can hear me. I realized I
Yes.
didn't do a sound check. Okay, great. It was well covered. And just to make clear, adopting a resolution of necessity authorizes the city to institute an eminent domain action, which would then allow the city to, once that action is filed, to apply to get immediate possession, and then that would give the city the public access, and then compensation would either be negotiated between the parties or determined by a court if the parties can't agree.
Quick question for procedurally for the required findings. Do you need us to have address them individually and find them individually, or do we just say we have found these 4 things to be true?
They are addressed in the resolution that is attached to the staff report. You do not need to do anything in particular out loud, but you should discuss, be sure you're familiar with what is in the resolution and feel comfortable adopting that resolution that's before you tonight.
Okay, fair. Okay, so let me ask council questions.
I have a question of our city attorney, but first of all, I'd like to say, I think it's unfortunate that we've come to this impasse because this has been a public project that has been in the works for more than my time on this council. And it's been a real community asset, this new building, and it will be an asset to that neighborhood as well as the entire greater community. But my question to the city attorney is, what's the timeline then for if we adopt this? Because we are under a budget, we are under constraint with our budget for this library and community center building by grants and by other things. We really have to be very precise and concise and on our planning for the building construction, or we lose a lot of money and we lose a building, frankly.
It's a great question, and I'll ask Laura to supplement because she'll be able, as litigator, will be able to provide a little more detail. But to emphasize one point that that Julian already touched on, once you adopt the resolution of necessity that authorizes the institution of the eminent domain action, we can very early in the process file with the court what's called a motion for immediate possession, which allows the case to essentially be split so that first the court rules on whether or not the city has satisfied the requirements to gain possession and will then be able to proceed with the project. And then there will be a later process that could ultimately result in a judgment on value, but ultimately the rest of the case will be about the value of the easement that the city seeks to acquire.
And for many of the courts are still coming out of their COVID scheduling restrictions that they had. And I know there's been delays because of trying to fill in where they were unable to hold hearings and cases before then. Are we confident that we could be on a timely schedule with this because of previous backlogs?
Yeah, and this is where I thought it would be helpful to have Laura weigh in
Okay.
since she's gonna be more familiar with current timelines.
Yes, under statute, eminent domain actions are entitled to priority, so we
Okay.
get to cut the line. And also just as far as actual timeline for a motion for immediate possession, if the motion has to be litigated, that is, there's some conflict over it, the most it would take would be about 6 months from today. That's, from this moment when the resolution of necessity would be adopted, if you adopt it. Often, once an eminent domain action is filed, owners are happy to agree to give possession. And if there's a stipulation to possession, the city could have possession quite soon, as soon as the owners agree to that.
Thanks, that's all.
Thank you. At first, I wanted to say I share Councilmember Way's sentiment that it's unfortunate we've gone to this point. I was just going through the findings, the checklist, and the first three, I don't have a problem. I think I can make those findings. Maybe just a little clarification from staff on the fourth one. The offer required by Government Code 7267.2 has been made to the owner of record. If you can just, maybe summarize what that means and what happened.
Yeah, so that fourth bullet means that we're required to make them an offer of purchase that includes a summary of our appraisal of the property. And we have to deliver that to the property owner per the tax roll. And then we have to negotiate with them and respond to questions that they have regarding that appraisal. And then if that doesn't lead anywhere, then we're allowed to do the resolution of necessity. We can't not offer to buy the property and then go to try and claim it and say they haven't been coordinating with us. So we have to make that offer to them initially, and that's what the fourth bullet is. We have satisfied that.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, what was the date when that was submitted?
I believe that was April 1st.
Yeah, it's April 1st, and I just wanted to emphasize that this is attachment to the item, the offer letter, and there are a series of things that the statute that's cited in that finding requires to be included in the offer. So the letter is in the packet. It's dated April 1st. It was sent to the record owner and to the association, and the staff worked with my office and with a right-of-way consultant to ensure that all the statutory requirements were met. So we feel confident that the information that's in the record demonstrates that you are able to make that finding.
Okay, I appreciate the repetition.
Other questions from council? I have one quick question, Julian. If you just pull the report back up real quick on slides 4 and 5. Slide 4 is the yellow one where Rose Lane has had that. No, keep going. No, 2 more. That one. Okay, so I just want to make sure the yellow there is just for the name Rose Lane, but the actual part that is owned privately includes where the roundabout is. And I think that's what I'm seeing from the next slide, because it goes around the area where the bend is, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Correct. I apologize for the confusion because I did use yellow later on to indicate the area. Here, the yellow is a highlight, so it's just highlighting that that's Rose Lane in this scenario. But yeah, if you compare this to one of the later slides, the actual area of the right of way would extend from basically Doherty all the way through the Rose Lane name. It would then go through the roundabout to where where that crosswalk is, essentially on the south side of the traffic circle at the driveway.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And with that, no other questions from council. I will open the public hearing. So let's start with people here. If you have something to say, please come up, please introduce yourself, and let's hear what you got to say.
Hi, I'm Sandy Gouldman, president of the Terraces HOA. The Terraces are the senior condos that are subordinate to the Rose Lane Master Association. We pay 35% of their expenses, and we have no voice whatsoever in what they do. It's very frustrating. I have been asked to find out if, when this process completes, will the city of Larkspur actually own the property that you have the easement over and be responsible for the maintenance of the pavement, the sidewalks, the street landscaping, and the storm drains?
That is an excellent question. I'll refer that over to, I think I know the answer, but I'll refer to staff. Julian, is that you?
Yeah, so the acquisition is in the form of a permanent right-of-way easement. So the Rose Lane Master Association would still be the underlying property owner of that area. It's just similar to how most of the streets in Larkspur are. The city doesn't actually own the street. They have a right-of-way easement over the street for public access. But the homeowner is theoretically the property owner under the street. Usually to the abutting property owners are owned to the center of the street in the most cases, and the city has a right of way over the street. In this case, because it's a parcel that the HOA owns and we're taking a permanent right of way easement over it, we're not taking fee title of that. They would still be listed as the property owner and it would be encumbered. It's already encumbered with a number of easements or sewer easement, water easement. And so on top of that, there would now be a city right-of-way easement, a public right-of-way easement over this portion.
So would it be accurate to say the answer is no, the city has no responsibility for sewage or maintenance of the road or anything like
No,
that?
not sewage,
Well,
storm drain, storm drain.
Storm drains.
No, I believe we will be similar to the other city streets where the city is not the underlying property owner, but the city has the city will maintain the street and make sure that it's kept up to standards. The striping is kept up to code and things like that because it's going to be used by the public. And so while the HOA will theoretically own the land on paper underneath, we will treat it like any other city street.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Including the street trees and the sidewalks.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Now, I would like to take off my official hat and say, as a resident of the terraces, this is profoundly embarrassing. I'm just humiliated at the behavior of the Master Association. We all knew when we bought there that the library was going there. It's a public amenity. And the idea that the Master Association has behaved the way it has is really embarrassing to a number of us, and I apologize. But we are powerless to do anything about it. It's a power, excuse me, it's the Master Association's board is flexing its authority.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Other people would like to speak during this public hearing? Seeing none, I will go online. Is there anyone online that has a question or a comment on this item?
Looking for any raised hands from our Zoom audience members. And there's no public comment.
Okay, with that in mind, I will close the public hearing and I will bring it back to council. Does council have any other questions or comments for staff?
I just want to kind of echo what Ms. Gullen said. And I want to thank the staff for all the hard work you've done to make this happen. I know it's been months and months of back and forth and negotiation, and not only with the city manager, but with the public works director and also with our city attorney and our other attorney online for us. I'm sorry we've had to come to this situation where we didn't have an amicable decision, but hopefully we can from now. But I really appreciate the hard work you've put into this. I know it's levels of frustration that have been expressed in the public hearing are probably felt by some of us also. So I'm pleased that, not pleased that we had to get here, but I'm glad we're moving ahead.
Mr. City Manager, did you grab the mic because you have a comment?
I thought if you'd indulge me to say something,
Of course.
Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate those comments and the words of support as the lead of the negotiation team. But with that said, I do want to emphasize parties deserve the right to take their positions and negotiate. And that's what happened here. And we're not necessarily done. And I don't want to characterize the situation we're in and what we're asking you to do today as necessarily adversarial. Sometimes when you hear the words eminent domain, you think this is the ultimate adversarial situation. But in this case, we need certainty because of the timelines tied to the state funding that we received. And this process was the only one we found where we could have that certainty to get to the finish line. we'll still be talking with the Master Association. And we want to be good neighbors when the dust settles, and I think they want to be good neighbors with us. You know, I just want to make sure everybody understands that the talks are still going on. I wish we weren't here too, but we really brought this to you because this guarantees we can meet our obligations to that state grant.
Yeah, no, and I think we recognize that due to the complexities of the voting structure, that things take longer than we may have had time for. So, yeah, I concur. I don't see it as necessarily adversarial. It's just what we need to do to make this happen. Okay, other comments or questions from council? Okay, can we get a motion?
I will move to, read it off the record. I will move to pass the resolution of necessity authorizing eminent domain proceedings to condemn permanent right-of-way on parcel number 022-74102 for the Larkspur Library.
I'll second that.
Okay, let me check with our esteemed council. Was that sufficient for our purposes? Seeing a shake of the head, I'm seeing a yes. All right. So can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Andre,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor White.
Yes.
Mayor Kendall.
Yes. Okay, that will close item 7.2. Thank you. And let's open item 7.3. An ordinance amending the just cause eviction and tenant protection ordinance to allow property owners to change the terms of a tenancy to comply with third-party public or private regulatory requirements. Can we get a staff report on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, at a prior council meeting, the council took public comment from the representative for the Greenberry Property Management Company, which is the single largest property owner in terms of rental property in the city. And he expressed concern with the language in the ordinance around the requirement that the property owner can't change the rules involved in a lease without the agreement of the tenant. And he expressed it in the concern that they have had an insurance company tell them that if they can't get compliance on a particular issue, in this case, it was the use of barbecues on decks at the property, then they risked having their insurance canceled. And he further stated for you that they were not getting that cooperation from all of their tenants. And so he asked you to consider making a change to the ordinance that would allow them to enforce requirements that are imposed on them by their insurance company. And so you directed us to bring this language to you, and that's what you have in front of you today is language that would allow a landlord, a property owner to inform their tenant or tenants that due to some regulatory requirement that they're receiving from a third party, such as an insurance company, the rules in the lease need to be modified.
Okay, and just for clarification, this exception would only apply if there is a third-party requirement to do something. They couldn't unilaterally change terms of a lease, you know.
Yes, and language was included that requires the property owner to demonstrate to the tenant who is requiring the change and why.
Okay. Okay, questions from council?
Could you, I must have missed that meeting. Maybe that was when I was ill or that's when I had COVID, I think. But what would be another example other than the barbecue example?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I've never
Okay.
done leases beyond leasing city offices, and we haven't had those types of restrictions. So we'd probably want to bring somebody in to talk more about
All
it.
right.
That was the example that was brought, was the issue of barbecues on balconies, which resonated with me. If I go way back to when I lived on a second floor apartment,
Yeah.
I do actually recall getting in trouble for setting up a barbecue. So I understand that's a problem.
So in that case, the regulatory agency is the insurance carrier for the property owner. But if there's a state, let's say a state law, for instance, they need a 5-foot hardscape around their building to comply with fire hazard safety requirements, and a tenant who has landscaping they don't want removed, but to comply with existing fire hazard requirements, it needs to be removed. Would that be an example, maybe?
So government regulation was already covered in the
Okay.
ordinance. What the speaker had pointed out was that something like an insurance company is ambiguous
I get it.
in the language.
Okay.
And because they were struggling to get compliance from tenants on this particular issue, he was asking for this change.
Okay, so government regulations are already covered. So if,
Yeah.
right, so we already covered that part. That was my concern, that we were opening it up too wide, but, all right.
Okay, other questions for council?
Yeah, so when I read this, does this allow so I think the issue was that the landlord was requiring either access or compliance in order to come into compliance with, a requirement by an insurance agency. So does this read that way when it says, when it simply says that they can change the terms of the tenancy, but are they allowed to enforce the rule of enforce the change in the tenancy? Does that allow the landlord to enforce the rule? So this allows them to change the terms of the tenancy, but does that in turn allow them to also enforce the rules?
I think, again, neither of us are fully equipped to answer that question. We'd have to have leases in front of us to see how they're constructed. My assumption in the way the speaker spoke and trying to reflect on my own past life as a renter, there's a rules section of a lease, and then there's another section that says what happens if you break the rules. And so this language is intended to say you can change that section about the rules to insert language about these third-party regulatory requirements. So I think then you would be able to enforce it because you have another part of your lease that would say breaking the rules has consequences.
And allows eviction.
Yeah, so I think it's important in addressing this question to sort of understand the structure of the ordinance that this change is being made in. So this is a change to section 6.30.040 of the municipal code, which defines what an at-fault just cause eviction includes. So in other words, this defines a basis that a landlord can evict a tenant where there's a just cause for doing so. So it's basically an allowable eviction under the ordinance. And one of the bases for a just cause eviction is a breach of a material term of the lease. And this is what this change is doing is making it so that if a third-party regulatory entity is requiring the landlord to make a change to the terms of the lease, and the tenant then violates the provision of that provision of the lease, that is a basis for eviction that is an allowable basis for eviction under the ordinance. So it is in effect enforceable in the sense that, to just continue using the barbecue example, if the property owner's insurer says you have to prohibit people from using grills on their balconies, and the landlord goes through the proper process to document that and modify the lease terms, and then a tenant uses a grill on their balcony, that is a basis for termination of tenancy that is viewed as at fault and therefore an allowable basis for an eviction under the just cause ordinance.
Okay, so I have a question. So we're dealing with the just cause part of this, but what about the contractual part of this where a landlord and a tenant have a lease and it's a 1-year lease and one party unilaterally wants to change a term?
This does not address the underlying issues of contract law about whether or not that's a lawful modification to a contract. All this does, that's why I thought it was important to explain where this change is being made in the framework of the ordinance. All this change is doing is saying that from the city's perspective, where the city has said you may only evict a tenant that's covered by this ordinance under these limited set of circumstances, this is a minor change to say, if a third party is telling the property owner, you must modify leases to insert this provision, and the landlord then does so, and the tenant violates that provision, then that is a basis for eviction. Whether or not that's a valid modification of a contract under California contract law is an entirely separate issue that this change does not address. All it does is say that's an allowable basis for an eviction under the ordinance.
Got it.
Yeah, questions?
I'm just wondering, is there a good legal definition of third party? Because the way this was presented, I mean, it seems entirely reasonable to me. I've said that, I've always wanted Measure D to, keep landlords in business and keep tenants housed. And this is part of keeping landlords in business. I almost lost my home insurance because plants were too close to my house. So I get that, but I'm a little concerned that there's workarounds or, there could be retaliation, what's the definition of third party and then a second follow-up question would be, is there any appeal here?
What was the second part?
Appeal. If I know that we were supposed to have a review board for rental rates, but for just cause, I just wanted some clarification around.
Well, I'll take those in reverse order, and the city manager may have some additional thoughts on the first part, but for the second part, this would be an issue in an unlawful detainer action. So there would be an appeal in the sense that the court would adjudicate whether or not it was truly a third party, whether or not the landlord had followed the procedure, whether or not it was a properly made modification to the lease. I think in this context, there's a pretty substantial body of California case law that we could rely upon to clarify whether or not it's truly a third party. Again, it's really going to be something that is adjudicated in the course of an unlawful detainer action. But I think I think it's also clear in context that the point here is that this does not authorize the landlord to simply say, I'm going to modify the terms of the lease. Some external entity that is not the tenant, not the property owner or property manager, has to instruct the property owner, you must do this either as a matter of law or to maintain insurance in order to be able for them to justify the change. So it has to be somebody who's external to the relationship between the property owner and the tenant.
Okay, so if I could paraphrase, the level of protection for the tenant, what we've done with Measure D is we've put in a layer where the city acts, on behalf of the tenant to ensure, some of the different things, including the warning and the, the cost for move out when there's no just cause. So here we're now saying we're pulling ourselves out and we go back to the court system and how unlawful detainers are adjudicated for tenants to find their protection.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So follow up to what you just said, city attorney. So in this case of the insurance company withdrawing the fire insurance, if they don't, if they don't get the grills off the balcony, I mean, does that fall under the regulatory requirement? Is that because that's just simply, I'm not going to insure you unless you do this. Is that a regulatory? I'm just trying to read this to make sure
It's
that
regulatory within the sense that within the sense used within the amendment that we're making.
Okay, so that would qualify.
Yes.
That the insurance company is threatening to remove their coverage. Okay, that's all I need to know.
When we were crafting the language, what we were struggling with to answer both your questions. I didn't think it would work to tightly define insurance company. We were trying to create an umbrella term that, because I don't want tenants getting in arguments with their property owners about insurance broker versus insurance agency versus some other third party that I haven't even contemplated yet that may be involved. So that's why we were trying to broaden this. We're not constantly modifying this section of the ordinance as we find out about some other third party that we should be putting on a list.
Okay, other questions from council?
Just one comment, reflection is I'm appreciating that we have, this just cause ordinance, where we can hear the community and say we make a decision and it's maybe even the wrong decision, we can go back and change it. The one reason I wanted this to be a city ordinance versus, something that was voter passed is because we can, within a couple of, readings, make adjustments, because I truly believe the four people up here want to serve both the landlords and the tenants. So with that, I did have some reservations, but I have some trust in staff's languaging, and again, my concerns would be, anything retaliatory or, losing the appeal process that's close to home. But that being said, I understand business needs too.
That's well said.
Okay, with that, I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in chambers that would like to make a comment on this this item? Please come forward and feel free to talk. I'm seeing some head nods, but there we go.
Well, hello again.
Come on up.
It's been a
Just-
while
Just pull the microphone close so we can hear you, okay?
and maybe higher.
Yeah.
Richard, do you want us to tell us your name?
My name is Richard. And I'm with the Skylark Tenants Association. And of course, on the face of this, it looks like, feels like, smells like taking a right away from a tenant. Just generally looking at it and absorbing what it might mean and what the implications of this might be. It doesn't seem like it would stop at a barbecue on a balcony. I mean, where could this go in the long term? And what other things could be brought into this? Because if there was an ambiguity to begin with, this seems kind of vague, and I'd hate to put an ambiguity on top of an ambiguity. And so, and I know you can't put every single example of what this might apply to or what might apply to this. So it's kind of, it has a vagueness to it. And I was just wondering what would other examples be that could help clarify what the implications of this is long-term, not just about one instance with one type of company, an insurance company, about barbecues on a balcony.
So Richard, let me say, I completely agree with you. Okay. And I think that was Gabe's point. Gabe's point, and what going back and forth with staff is, how do we make this broad enough so that we're not fighting over whether it's an insurance company or insurance broker or insurance this, but how do we make it narrow enough to protect the tenants from a landlord trying to take advantage of this loophole and saying, oh, I now want to take this away because, for whatever reason, financial reasons. So what staff did is they put some terms in there like guardrails saying a regulatory, reason, such as an insurance company, right? So it gives, by putting in there a regulatory reason, it's saying it can't just be for any reason the landlord wants. It has to be something related, for example, an insurance company. We're all sitting here with the same question. What else could fall under this? And we can't actually think of anything. But I had the same concern that maybe we're missing something that, 6 months from now, somebody else is going to say, oh, that we're going to sneak that in under that paragraph. I share your concern. I just don't know how to do it better. I think we have to allow the landlords, the property owner to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to lose my insurance. The insurance company is making me do this. So we have to let them do that and not lose their insurance. But at the same time, we want to restrict it to something similar to that. And if you or anyone in the audience, when you give your public comment, has an example of something that may sneak in here, or, a better way to do this, I'm happy to hear. But I mean, this is what the best staff came up with, the best I think we can think of. And that's kind of where we are. So yeah, if there's something, please let us know.
Yeah, no, when I think of an insurance company, I don't think of them as a regulatory body. I think of them as a corporation in business selling insurance to people to try to make money, right? I think of the fire department as a regulatory, but this is not the fire department telling people you can't put barbecues on your boat. It's this outside entity, which is not part of a governmental body and doesn't really regulate in the usual sense that you think of the word
I agree with you.
regulation.
I agree with you. But if we're trying to allow for the property owner to change a lease so they don't lose their insurance. And if we say an outside business entity, like you're saying, that's a really wide thing. So we're trying to narrowly say something that sort of regulate, and maybe regulate is the wrong word, but something that would distinguish someone like an insurance company that is kind of requiring the landlord to do this versus the landlord just wanting to do it. And like I said, if anyone's got any ideas or better language, I think we're all ears. But I think this was an attempt by staff, and I think they did a good job in trying to be as narrow as they can, but letting this particular example, fit in that hole.
So what types of other companies could potentially put restrictions on landlords? I mean,
I agree, but I don't know.
It's not insurance. They deal with all construction companies, this, that, all kinds of things. So again, there's something about it that seems vague, and that doesn't seem balanced because it will affect tenants without their having a say in it at all. And then what's being said, well, it's not us, it's this entity over here. And it doesn't seem right. I'll just put it that way. It just doesn't seem right.
I hear you, and I understand your concern, and I have the same concern. I just don't know a better way to do it, because if we don't let them do this, and hypothetically the insurance rates go way up, and then they're going to come to us and say, hey, we have to raise the rents more than the cap because we can't make the
Well,
our
that's what this
costs.
could lead to.
But we're trying. This is an obvious example of when the insurance company says, hey, you're going to lose your insurance. I think it is in society's best interest for the property owner to have insurance. I think that's what everybody wants. So I think we as a society want them to be able to do that. So I'd like to carve something out to let them do that without opening up a door that lets them do other things. And I think that was staff's intention, which is why, and like I said, I think it's a difficult task for staff, and I think they did a good job. But if you got a better idea, I'd love to hear it.
Well, maybe together we could come up with better ideas if we're given the time to follow through with this. I don't know when you're planning to vote on it, but
We're going to vote on it tonight because we want. So hold on. But Richard, the beautiful thing about what Gabe said,
Right.
is we can always change
modify
it.
again.
We have something coming up right now, and we have property owners saying, we're going to lose our insurance. We don't want them to lose their insurance. So I would like to deal with this tonight, and then in a future meeting, and it could be 3 months from now, whenever it is, we can say, hey, you know what, let's fix the language, and we can always go back and fix it.
so is the language going to state specifically an insurance company?
The language says
Third party.
a regulatory third party such as an insurance company.
Such as. So it's not limiting it to an insurance.
I
company.
agree, but I can't think of anybody else who would fall into that category.
That will come along and say, oh, okay, this is our thing, and we're gonna impose this, and we're gonna demand this, and we're gonna.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, but so the situation that we're in though, and I'm just speaking for myself, okay, is I don't want them to lose their insurance because that's bad for everybody. So I think maybe we look at this as a Band-Aid and we say, hey, we're going to pass this. Everybody go home and think about it. And if we can come up with better language, everybody on the council here, nobody wants tenants to get taken advantage of. Nobody wants landlords to use this to sneak things in. We're trying to protect people, but not force people to lose their insurance. So as a Band-Aid, I think this is what staff came up with, and I think it serves its purpose. It lets them get their insurance, but it keeps the door very small for other things to try to sneak through. And we can always come back and adjust it. If everybody, and you can talk to the Larkspur Tenants Association, and if, you guys come up with better language and you propose it to us, and we'll run it by staff, and if it makes sense, I'm happy to bring it back and switch it out. I just don't want people to lose their insurance, because that in California is a disaster.
But in the future, you're not going to want people to lose something else here and something else there and something else here. And
I
people
don't
are
know.
always in situations where they can lose something. So.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, Richard, let me
Yeah.
get some
No,
other
no,
comments
I
in here.
appreciate the feedback, and I
You know,
really
just-
felt it was unclear, and I would.
No,
like,
I totally get what you're saying.
Some,
Yeah,
thank you.
no, thank you. Okay, and is there other public comment here in chambers? Of course.
My name is Jennifer Metzger. I'm a Bon Air tenant. I just have a legal question coming from a family of lawyers. Isn't a lease a legal a contract? I sign a lease. That's why, I mean, that's my question.
Let me answer that question. So what staff said is that what we are doing here
Right.
is addressing the tenant protections in the ordinance. We are not touching contractual rights. So what a landlord has to do to change a lease, whether they have to wait for the lease to expire, whether, that's depends on the actual lease itself. And it may say in the lease that there are terms to change.
Right.
That's not what we're addressing tonight. Does that answer your question?
In your way, it does. I can tell you guys are already had made your decision about this. It's pretty clear from how you've been talking. We are fighting a much bigger entity as tenants. And of course, everyone in my family is a homeowner. I don't want anyone to lose their insurance, but Bon Air asked us to take our barbecues off of our decks, and everyone did. I mean, it was an easy ask. Don't use your barbecue. It's an ordinance that we all were aware about from the city. Wasn't even Bon Air. Larkspur told us you can't have we have wooden decks. We did it. So bringing up the barbecue issue is a little bit, also strange to me, because come up with something that makes more sense. We complied. We did what we were asked to do.
But again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk for council.
No, it's okay.
But first of all, I'm not talking for council, I'm talking for myself.
Right.
I have not made up my mind, because if somebody comes up with a better idea, I'm happy to listen to it.
Okay.
And as far as the barbecue, my understanding is that the insurance company didn't need everyone to remove their barbecues. They needed it in the lease that there can't be barbecues in order for the insurance to cover it. Was my understanding. And I can ask staff if I'm misreading that, or if you have information to the contrary. By the way, if anything I'm saying is wrong, please correct me.
I think the nuance in the code, and remember, we're focusing, as Sky told you, on reasons that would be cause for eviction. The code says you have to go get the agreement of the tenant in order to make this modification of the rule. And in this case, Green Bay Property Management said to you, we have tenants who are not agreeable. So now we have a problem, because you have an ordinance that says we have to have their agreement. And that was what they brought to you and how they framed the problem.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question?
I would hope that they would just deal with that certain tenant instead of making this a universal, we have our leases changed. I wouldn't say often, but twice last year, just shoved in our doors and in the mail, unbeknownst to us. Here's your new lease. Here's your new lease. Twice last year. Everyone said, what is it? Why do we get a new lease? I didn't ask for a new, just a new lease. And that's just sort of de rigueur for this, where we live right now. And this is another thing. So this is just, I feel like we just constantly fight to stay in our apartments with, we can't use our docks anymore. We can't have barbecues. And I get all that. The dock was sinking because plastic kayaks were tied to it. I never saw any, report that anything we were doing to the docks was damaging them, or the docks have been there for 50 years. That's what they're there for. They have cleats on them, so you can tie little canoes on them. That's why people move to that part of Green Bay. We can't use those anymore. No reason, just we got a notice on our door. You cannot tie anything to the dog. You cannot have a barbecue. It just seems like what's happening is the privileges are getting taken away. And this sounds like this way it's going to be blamed on a third party now. This isn't us, it's the insurance company. This isn't us, this is the seagulls. You know, I mean, it's always someone else. And we pay the price. And now this is just, yet another thing that I feel like undermines the safety that a lot of people feel, they used to feel, living in the Bon Air apartments. And that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Other public comment?
Hello, council members. Good to see you all. I appreciate the opportunity to sort of echo what my neighbors and friends have said. Two things come up for me. One is, like Jen said, a lease is a contract. It is a contract that tenants get into with the landlords when we live there. And that contract, under California law, any contract cannot be changed unless both parties actually agree to it. The protections that tenants have is that a landlord cannot arbitrarily change material parts of a contract. I know this because we've been talking about it quite a bit, especially when Prime took over at Skylark. And that is the only thing that protected us, is because we had a contract that had been there for a long time that they needed to honor. Otherwise, a lot of our rights would have been taken away. So what this is doing, it's creating it's giving a bigger imbalance between the power that landlords have versus what the tenants have. Right now, as it stands, for a landlord to change a material thing on your contract, they need to have a conversation with you. Hi, we have had this insurance claim. This is what it is. We have to change it. Do you agree? That is what the relationship is. What is happening here is one landlord brought an issue, and now the whole ordinance is getting changed. And we believe that, as somebody said, if it's troubled tenants, then they should be dealt with one at a time. You can notice them. You can let them know that there's an option to do that. I think the other thing for us, which is a big flag, is that, and Mr. Schwartz, I think you mentioned this, is that this actually is going to tie into the just cause eviction protections, which means if the landlord has arbitrarily changed your lease, then this thing that you hadn't agreed to in the beginning of your lease is enacted without you knowing, and you didn't know and you didn't agree to it, then you can be evicted. And the whole point of just cause eviction protections is so that they can protect tenants to actually stay there. When I hear us saying that the way that this is going to be taken care of is through an unlawful detainer, and I'll ask a question, if any of you have gone through an unlawful detainer situation. It is the most stressful thing you could ever go through in your life. You're about to lose your home. The landlord has filed a case at Marin County Court, and you have to defend it. I can't believe we're actually taking away that protection from the tenants because of a barbecue grill. We need to take a few steps back. And what I'd like to offer Mayor Kandel is, because Mr. Schwartz said that, and Mr. Woodruff said that they're not experts in leases and California lease protection, and I'm not either, like the leases, then I think we should take a step back, hold off on voting, and call legal aid of Marin. They deal with this every day. This is their expertise. This is where they are. And let's talk about what does this actually look like as far as protecting tenant rights. But what we're worried about is the fact that this will be put in a lease. The tenant has no right to even discuss. The landlord can just put it in there, and it's very ambiguous. And one of I think Mayor Kandel, you had asked, how do we make it better? We make it better by tightening it, not opening it up. Opening it up makes it like you can put anything in there. So I I really would urge you to not vote tonight, take a step back and call experts and also notice so that you can hear from other tenants. We only found out about this on Friday or Thursday night when the agenda was sent out. We didn't know before that. And I think we should take a step back. I think we should look at what this means as far as it actually affecting. This will actually become now a part of why you can get evicted. That's huge. Councilmember Paulson, it doesn't give me courage and it doesn't give me encouragement that my home is protected because my landlord could just arbitrarily put something in there from a private sector or other governing body or whoever else that could be. So again, I really urge you to take a step back, listen to both parties because you all promised us that this process would be a process where just the same way the landlord was able to come here and make their case and got on the agenda, we're asking you to take a step back, really talk to us, the tenants, because did you guys talk to any other tenants before us today?
So Julie, I'm sorry, and
No, I'm
I'm trying to just limit to 5 minutes.
Yeah,
just
yeah, no,
to-
I understand. It's a hearing, right? So we can go back and
I
forth.
understand, but
Yeah.
I also have to
Okay,
be
so that is
conscious of
a
the time.
question, Mayor Kandel. Did you all actually seek input from the tenants? Because we believe we're an equal person on the table as well, because this affects us greatly.
So to answer your question for me personally, I didn't talk to a landlord and I didn't talk to a tenant. What I did do is I listened to staff and staff said that your interpretation of this is not exactly what this does. This does not give and staff, please tell me if I'm misunderstanding. But what I heard staff say, this does not give a landlord a right to unilaterally change a lease.
It does, though. That's exactly what it does.
Hold on. Let me ask our legal expert. Does this allow a landlord to universally change a lease, to unilaterally change a lease?
It does not.
Okay. I think you're misreading the ordinance. So what I'm explaining is that, and the reason that if this allowed a landlord to change a lease unilaterally, I would vote against it in a second. Okay, but that's not what this does. This is just dealing with the tenant protection part of our regulations, so that it doesn't change the landlord-tenant relationship. It doesn't change contractual rights. It doesn't change your lease, your terms of your lease, the ability for somebody to change the terms of the lease. It just affects the way the city will deal with if there is a problem based on a term such as the insurance. And that's what I heard our city attorney say. And as he is the expert legal mind for the city, I'm relying on his expertise and I believe that's what it says. And that's why I'm comfortable with it, because it doesn't actually take away your contractual rights. So having said that, let me just ask you, I'm trying to limit it to 5 minutes of
Yeah.
questions so everyone gets to talk.
Yeah.
Would you be okay if we let somebody else talk at this
Yeah,
point?
absolutely. May I ask
Okay.
just one quick question to the attorney, if that's okay?
You can address comments to
Okay,
the council.
and this is directed to the attorney. It does say that it does allow the landlord to change that language on the lease, on that part. It says it right on your,
Okay, so.
and I can read it out for you if you want me to, but it does say that. It says it does allow them to change that, and that it would be a portion part of the lease.
Okay, can I ask the city attorney to address that concern, please? Run out of batteries.
Little microphone shuffle. So the paragraph that's in the ordinance in front of the council has to be read in the context of the entire chapter 6.30. And in that structure, what the language means is that if a landlord is otherwise allowed to modify the terms of of a lease, and they do so, and it's a change that is the result of a third-party regulatory entity, public or private, as stated in the ordinance, then, and a tenant then violates that lease term, that is treated as a just cause for eviction. It does not say it, again, reading it in the context of the entire chapter, it does not say we, the city of Larkspur, are overriding state, federal, other law to allow one party to unilaterally modify the terms of a contract. It's saying that if the landlord is otherwise able to do so, and it's a change that meets the requirements of this section, and a tenant then violates the revised term of the lease, then that is a just cause for eviction.
All right. I hope that clarifies it. I'd like to actually hear from other people. Gabe, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, no, let's hear. I mean, I think, I'll save my comment.
Okay. Is there anyone else in chambers that has a comment on this item?
Mine's not really a comment, it's just a question.
Sure.
Christina, I live at Bon Air. I don't know if any of y'all are pro-tenant. Is anybody on the city council?
We're not pro landlord or pro tenant. We're trying to do something that's fair and in the best interest of the city. You know, so it's not a pro one side or the other. We're trying to be balanced.
Yeah, because Bon Air has the resources to put this stuff out there and the tenants don't. So, yeah, I'm just, overall, is there ever any pro-tenant stuff going on up
So,
there?
so I don't know if you were participating in our 16-month debate about rent control and tenant protections, but we went back and forth for a long time trying to make sure we struck a balance between the need for tenants to feel safe and to protect tenants and keep rents from going and tenant protections, and the needs of property owners to be able to get a fair rate of return so we don't decrease the supply of housing, which would hurt the city. And so that went on for a very long time. And it wasn't the pro-tenant people versus the pro-landlord people. It was, hey, let's all collaborate and try to think of what's best for the city. That was the process. It was a very long process. We heard from both sides, you know, and we had subcommittees, and this was not a quick thing. And we came up with this because we felt we're trying to strike that balance. And not everybody's going to be happy, and some people are going to feel it's too much one way, it's too much another way. But I don't think I would characterize anybody on council as either pro-tenant or pro-landlord. I think we're pro-Larkspur, trying to do what's in the best interest of the city. And I'm sorry if I'm hogging the mic here. I'm just so I'll. But someone feel free to say something. I don't.
Yeah.
You want to speak to other people?
I mean, I guess public comment, we don't usually go back and forth, but, I want to reflect on a few things. I mean, specifically, I was the mayor when a lot of this went through, and, I think if you go to the Marin IJ, there was a real effort to push back against any attempt to squash Measure D, which passed. So, that may be something you want to look up. I think on this issue, what I would love to hear, I maybe it would have been more appropriate to say it before the four of you came to the mic. And by the way, I really do appreciate your comments. I mean, I came in, with one sense, and I'm, trying to really absorb what you've said. But the one grounding thing that's really important for me to hear is, there's a lot of unknowns here, but the known is that there is balconies that are made out of wood and barbecues. Let's just focus on that one instance. Would the four of you say it's okay to change a lease to not have barbecues, for the good of all tenants and landlords, because it's a fire hazard and because insurance will be lost? Just that use case, that instance, is that
They already
acceptable?
changed it.
No, but is that acceptable? Okay. So I'm sorry, I went out of format, but that was my question to the people making public comment. Okay, hang on. We can't have people screaming from the back because you're not being mic'd, and I understand, but he was actually, I think, let's just move on.
If you have a barbecue, you're out. They already told us that. So, but I don't know why they're making
But
a whole.
I think that's the point. There are instances in which a tenant may say, forget you, I'm going to still keep my barbecue. And the property owner is up against the wall for that particular instance and needs to have another tool in the toolkit to preserve the integrity of the rest of the tenants if they lose their fire insurance, the rest of the tenants are going to be affected because one obstinate, let's say, tenant says, I'm not going to follow the rules. They just need another tool in the toolbox. And hopefully we never have to do that. And hopefully a property owner has it and navigates these changes with their tenants and people understand the reasonableness of this. But I think what we have to craft are the opportunities to create another tool that will provide the safety of the tenancy of all the other residents there. And this was just an example given. There may be others, and this may not be an issue because people will collaborate and cooperate. But I think we need to, as Councilmember Paulson said, part of the structure of an ordinance that we spent a year and a half crafting was the opportunity to see how we can modify it as circumstances change. And the circumstances presented to us was this particular example, which was an insurance may be compromised if a particular tenant did not do the behavior that was necessary to do. And it may be an insurance carrier says you can't have pit bulls in your building. It may be something like that. Right now, we're dealing with this one, but it's a tool in the toolkit that will protect tenants because if there's a fire, the entire structure is gone, let's say, and everyone's out. So we're working as hard as we can to find the balance, which is what we've done over the last year and a half, is the balance. And this may need to be modified in the time ahead, but that's the benefit of having an ordinance as opposed to a law that was created without these nuances to it. We can help craft even greater tenant protections along the same line. So I think we need to move on to other public comments.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, anyone here that has not spoken that wants public comment? Seeing none, let's go online. We see some hands raised. Allison, can you give us our first public comment?
James Holmes, possibly one helpful way to narrow this slightly and avoid abuse would be to specify in the ordinance that the third party must be unaffiliated. Because one would not want, for example, a situation where you had a lessor and the lessor had an affiliated property management company and the lessor caused the affiliate to make some demand and then pointed to this as authorization for it. So I think that one should require that the third party request come from a party that is unaffiliated, and affiliate is usually defined as an entity owned, operated, controlled, or under common control with the lessor.
Okay, that is a reasonable suggestion, James. Thank you. Let's go to the next comment.
Next speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sweet. I'm Allison. Hi. So thank you for bringing this to the table. I don't like it at all. It's just what everybody said. It's so ambiguous. It really is. And I hear you that you're saying that there are that there are already that this may help amend the law, but the thing is there is already a law around it, and we have already complied. I am a Bon Air tenant, by the way, and we have already complied. And writing it this ambiguously and this quickly it just doesn't make sense to do. I mean, you've given nobody, and I hear you being like, okay, well, let's let's just do it real quick. Like we've talked about it. But you didn't give anybody any time to really come up with more things that could, and it is written very broadly. And that is scary to do, because really other things could come in. It also just sounds like contractually illegal to me, but you've also talked about that. So I just really wish more notice is given to the people who are voting on this and who are affected by this. But 2016, the fire code, I think it was like 30, something, fire code 308 1.4. That already has that we can't have that. And that's from the town. So being like this, putting this in a lease, maybe something else though, is just like, why are we doing this so quickly? It is already a written law. Landlords are already protected from that law, and they can do whatever they need to do because it's breaking the code. So I guess I don't understand why it's this quickly, why no notice was given, and why it's written so openly. Like I think that more time should be had for, people to speak.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Allison, are there any other comments?
I'm looking for any additional raised hands from our Zoom audience members. And there's no further public comment.
Okay, with that, I will close public comment and bring it back. Let me ask, first, let me ask staff, let me ask our city attorney, is there a legal definition of unaffiliated that if we hypothetically were to put the word unaffiliated, was that going to cause problems with a legal definition?
Sorry, I'm just taking a look at the language as written.
Just where it says third party.
Yeah,
unaffiliated.
I don't know of an existing legal definition. I don't think it would be problematic to include that before the word third party in the proposed language.
Okay.
But couldn't a tenant bring that as on an appeal that they felt that the ruling had come from an affiliated to the property owner and therefore it was biased? Couldn't they put that forward?
Yeah, I think that it could be, yes, I believe that in the course of, if this became an issue where somebody was seeking a court to adjudicate whether or not this was a just cause eviction, that they could argue that that the alleged third party was really, basically not, one, it's not actually a requirement. It's just something that a sort of invented private entity came up with through an arrangement with the property owner, that the property owner was treating as a requirement from a third party with an effective regulatory requirement.
So there's a bad faith.
Yeah, exactly,
defense.
exactly. So I think that would be a reasonable argument to make in any case that came up under this. To me, third party includes unaffiliated. To me, that's sort of the definition. But if council feels like adding unaffiliated helps emphasize that, I don't see an immediate issue with it.
Okay, having heard that, let me put it to council for discussion. Any thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I had a few clarification. Well, just first on that last point, when you say tenant would have an appeal, we've taken out the layer where that would be decided at the city level and that appeal would be in an unlawful detainer hearing, right? So it sort of puts it into another arena. Is that correct to assume?
The tenant protection ordinances that the council adopted never had an administrative appellate provision process for just cause issues. Those were always going to be adjudicated through the courts.
Okay, I see. So it really just is a reference, another something the tenant could bring forward that it went against city ordinance.
Yes.
in their process.
Yes.
And then the 1482 state law doesn't speak to any of this, correct? I'm trying to remember because I know we spent a year and a half on this, but on this particular point, where does it weigh in? Because there is state protection, and what we tried to do in Larkspur is to add to state protection, and we very clearly did that when it came to the move out costs. We very clearly did that when it came to warning people over 62. On this, what did we do?
I see the city manager is pulling it up, so I won't try to race him to.
Okay,
to get it, but we can.
I can stall for you. I had a couple more clarifications. Tonight we're being asked to waive the first reading. If we don't waive the first reading, then what? We would bring this back for a public hearing, right?
Yeah, you'd essentially be tabling it and either indefinitely or directing staff to bring it back at a future meeting.
Okay, and then one last clarification, one of the last public, I think it was the last Zoom public comment. I don't know that that lines up with my recollection. So Bon Air Apartments specifically found that they were back against the wall and they didn't have the fire department's backing to do what they needed to do. Can you just walk me through that a little bit? I'm not sure what the facts are there. I think the public comment was that there's no need to make this kind of amendment because the tools in the toolbox, as we put it, already were there for this. Because I'm trying to stay grounded. You know, a lot of this discussion is fear of the unknown. Like, you know, this is too vague. What's going to happen? I want to stick to what we do know, which is there is a problem that it seemed that the landlord couldn't address. And I want to see if that's truly the case.
I'm making some speculation here that the speakers are referring to California Fire Code and probably the fire department making sure that California Fire Code was complied with. The city didn't have that role. The state passed the number that was referenced is California code. That code talks specifically about barbecues, but it lays out a bunch of exceptions. There's actually some notes in the page I was reading saying insurance companies have been having issues with the administration of this particular code. So I think that's consistent with what the speaker was trying to convey to you. I didn't do a factual investigation of what the speaker represented. The council instructed me to bring this back, so I brought it back.
Okay. So just, you know, I don't want to take any more time, but just to, you know, kind of close on my thoughts tonight. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and I want to thank everyone who's here. You know, it's good. You know, I you know, am reminded of how much time and, you know, how hard it was for us to come up with what we did. And we all know that the entire Ross Valley has these issues on the ballot. So they're very much alive. And so for me, this is worth spending time and I appreciate all you being here and you know, us going through this together. I think that, you know, again, I'm really concerned that businesses can run as businesses. And I'm also, you know, given the history, what happened at Skylark, I'm concerned about abuses, not to name them, but just that, you know, there are things that happen which are hard for the tenant or unfair. I would, you know, sort of submit to the council that I don't see an urgency in this matter. It's not before us tonight. I know we have a lot of business to move and I'm, you know, don't want to delay things, but, you know, if it would be okay, we heard a couple of proposals like adding waiver and, you know, how does this tie in with, you know, other, if we could go back to staff and have them try to clarify the language a little bit and allow for, you know, now that tenants know if they want to submit letters and more public comment that we can read, maybe we're missing something, you know, to allow this to have, you know, not to waive the first reading and to just, I don't think it's going to take as long the second time, but just to have more facts in front of us. And then, you know, unless there's a need, I don't know that Bon Air needs this tonight. So, you know, I'd feel more comfortable in the spirit of balance that we really have, you know, fully considered it because it seemed walking in, it was quite clear in my mind because I'm thinking this is a business need. I think a tenant would comply, but there do seem to be some nuances. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm standing tonight.
So I hear where you're coming from on that, but I need a little bit more clarification of what you expect, what further does staff need to provide for a better decision to be made? So, I mean, we already talked about unaffiliated and affiliated, that's probably not a good example, but what would be an example that would be helpful for you?
Yeah, I think the part of it is, you know, the third party vendor, if there were, I don't know if there's any other municipality that's had to go through this. I mean, I don't, if you've already researched it, maybe the answers are all in front of us tonight. But, you know, if there were a chance just to go back and see if there's another way to create a little more specificity here. And if not, then to come back and say there really isn't, which is good enough for me. And then also to give the public some time, you know, if there are more letters, there are more, I've heard a lot from Skylark. I've been up and down Bon Air Hill, you know, knocking on 700 doors, but I wouldn't mind hearing comments that may be relevant to this. So we would have more to read and deliberate, and if the facts don't really materially change, or, if it's still, I still believe the landlord really needs to be able to run a business, but I do want to make sure that the tenants feel heard and protected.
I hear your position, Gabe. I think for me, one, this is an issue of public health and safety. So that factors into, we have non-compliance with certain tenants. I know people here say that they've already complied, but obviously we have people who aren't complying, and it's an issue. And it's an issue of public health and safety for fire reasons and so forth. Secondly, I don't see why anyone would not comply with us, but if someone's not complying with it, the remedy is to just take the barbecue grill off your balcony. And if you're not doing it, then, I believe that the landlord needs to be able to enforce that for public health and safety reasons. And furthermore, if they want to go to the step of eviction, I mean, that's a whole different, there's a whole process around that where there's notice, where the landlord has to give notice to the tenant, you're not doing this, we need you to comply with this. So multiple chances for the tenant to rectify or remedy what is wrong. And so if you're persistent and not doing what's being asked, there are real ramifications for the landlord in terms of, not being able to get insurance. There are ramifications for the other tenants, public health and safety, fire risks, et cetera. So I feel like, this isn't we're just going to amend the lease or we're going to modify this. And the tenant has no idea that there's, nothing going on. I do feel like there are some guardrails here, just in terms of, the process that has to happen before the tenant actually goes into now I forget the term, but anyways, before unlawful detainment, sorry. So there are other steps that have to happen. It doesn't go there right away. So that's how I'm sort of finding comfort with how this is happening. Now, again, we can revise the language if we feel like it's not happening, it's not, if other things are happening that we don't feel is appropriate. But right now, I feel like there's reason to make this exception for the landlords. And two, we can, there are other things already written in the tenant protections law that in terms of process that allows the tenant the opportunity, like I said, to rectify the situation.
So just a couple, thoughts on what you said. I think that, and I brought this up with the chamber tonight, that the use case of the fire is really clear to me. And that's kind of why I was very prepared to vote tonight. I think some of the things you were saying, it's true that, the entire, unlawful detainer and eviction process has guardrails, and the noticing is extremely strict, because I lived in Berkeley. I've seen all the appeals. But here I'm thinking more, we as a council are, as Councilmember Way said, we're putting another tool in the box. And I just want to ensure that the tool isn't a blunt instrument, or as we said, not too wide, not too narrow. So to hear more from the public gives me a sense of perspective. And I'm not inclined to change my position at all that this use case is valid. I just am wondering if I'm overgeneralizing on this instance. And that's where, if there's a way that the city attorney can just, give us one more, I looked it over and that's the best I can do, or maybe there's something better, going on in Hayward or somewhere else. And then to hear from maybe 5 or 10 more people through letters, I would just have a higher level of confidence in my vote.
So let me give you my thoughts on it real quick. I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. Okay. This does not change contractual rights. It does not give a landlord the right to say, hey, I'm going to change your lease and you can't have a barbecue, or you can't have a, pit bull, or whatever it is. It's not doing that. Okay. What it is doing is it's very simply saying, if we legally change our lease, I'm the landlord, you're the tenant. We say, hey, listen, I got to change this because the fire code. And you say, okay, that's fine with me. And we agree and we legally change the lease. And then 6 months later, you say, screw it, I'm gonna have a barbecue and on my deck. That now is a reason to evict somebody.
Or to start that
Or
process.
to start the eviction process, right? It just changes a this type of lease violation, to that category. Right? And because it's not, I don't think that's something that we need to protect is, hey, I legally changed the lease, but screw it, I'm going to violate the lease by causing danger to, causing my landlord to lose the insurance or causing my neighborhood to burn down. I think that probably should be something that they could start the eviction process for that. So I don't have a problem with that. And also, I am truly comforted by the fact that we have the ability to change this anytime. That if we do this and we hear that it's being abused, that there's a problem, that people are trying to actually use it to change leases when they're not allowed to change leases, and we need to make it more clear, we can always do that. And because I feel comfortable about that, that's why I'm comfortable doing this now. Okay. And I just know that we have so many things on the agenda coming up that another public hearing about this. And again, if it was something that involved, something like someone's tenant's rights regarding negotiating their lease, I would feel differently. Okay. But it's not. Okay. It's a very small sliver of the Tenant Protection Act that if the lease is legally changed and it's violated, it puts it in this category. Because of that, I'm okay with it.
And all the protections for the tenant to go through an eviction process still exist. They're still there. This just adds one more category of which a property owner can say, I'm pushed up against the wall for this. I'm going to have to, with your non-compliance, move forward with that process. But that process is still there. I mean, that process in which we have created that process where we have a board that will hear both sides and there are certain rules that need to be followed. And it's not an arbitrary process. I feel like that's still there. And the tenant still has those protections. But this is just a reality that the property owner may be facing, losing insurance on the entire building and then having to shut the entire building down, impacting dozens of other people because they don't have control over that. I don't have control. I mean, a lot of us don't have control over third parties' imposition of certain rules to us because that's the way our system is set up.
Yeah. And again, I'll be really brief. I mean, I agree with, first of all, I do think that the fact that this is an ordinance is really helpful. And if the 4 members brought up a specific case where it was abused, I would take it as seriously as a specific case where for the landlord, they felt they didn't have a right. So I think there is a fluidity here, which hopefully will benefit the community. So absolutely, I feel I'm on the same page about that. I think the use case, and I keep using that word, but the insurance one, everything you said is clear. And I want to let the landlord, and I think everyone here agreed that you got to be able to run a building and it's not burned down. I think there's some, maybe it's just the timing issue. And again, I may need to be the dissenting vote, but I just want you to understand why. I think we're on the same page for the best for Larkspur. I just feel, creating more of a platform, and maybe this was you were glad to see me step down as mayor last year because that's maybe my fatal flaw. Maybe it's a good thing, but either way, I'll close with that.
All right. Any other comments before we take a motion? Okay. Does anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move ordinance amending the just cause eviction and tenant protections ordinance to allow property owners to change the terms of a tenancy to comply with third-party public or private regulatory requirements.
That's sufficient.
And can I ask, in your motion, would you like to add the word unaffiliated before third party?
No.
It's your motion.
No.
Okay. Can we get a second?
Second.
Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Andre,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
No.
Vice Mayor White.
Yes.
Mayor Kendall.
Yes. Okay, that was our last business item for the evening. So thank you everyone very much, and we are adjourned.
Yeah.